When the tour bus got into an accident, the hero thought, "End it all, give up." At first, the teenager thought it was the end of his 16-year life. The accident made the young man think differently, and this event changed his life forever. The boy heard his mother screaming, "You are lying! My son could not have died!" The hero's eyes were closed, but the voice of the closest person calling him by name was able to overcome the boundary of life and death. The mother was able to wake her son up and bring him back from the dead. Sometime before the accident, the school children were traveling in a big red bus on a field trip. All of them are about to start high school. The girl with the microphone said to her audience, "Why don't you and I take advantage of this rare opportunity?" She wanted to lead her classmates to a revelation, so that everyone on the bus would reveal their deepest desire. One of the boys, who was chubby, exclaimed, "I want to be thin as lightning." Another young man dreamed of beating everyone in high school and reaching the top. Everyone liked the classmate's suggestion, and the children started shouting out their wishes. All but one boy, who paid no attention to the general commotion. Feng Yan, a 9th grader, was talking to his mother on the phone at that very moment. The hero asked his mother not to worry and wait for him at home, assuring her that nothing would happen to him. The classmates continued to argue about their own desires, and the tour bus drove onto the bridge at that time. The driver's thoughts at this time: "This bunch of assholes are so noisy. It's strange. This road is always busy. Why don't I see any cars today?" The man driving the bus had the feeling that there was no end to this road. The girl who forced her classmates to share their reserved desires thought, "This is frustrating. Why is Luo Shi still not talking?" Meanwhile, Feng Yan continued to talk to his mother on the phone. In the same row, there was a lonely girl who did not participate in the discussion of her classmates. She looked withdrawn and confused. The beautiful woman with the microphone said, "This is your only chance to tell the class what is in your heart. You should do it now, so you won't regret it later." After these words from her classmate, Luo Shi's expression changed from confused to determined. The girl got to her feet and walked over to Feng Yan. He was still talking on the phone, but the beauty called out to him softly. The young man finally heard his name being called and looked at Luo. There was a question in his eyes. The beauty closed her eyes, clasped her hands, and exclaimed, "I like you." She said it so loudly that all her classmates heard her confession. For a moment, the bus was silent. The boys were stunned that the most beautiful girl in the class had confessed her feelings for Feng Yan. Meanwhile, the hero could not find anything to say. All the male classmates were in love with Luo Shi. The guys were unhappy that they were not the lucky ones. A young man with glasses thought, "It seems that Feng Yan can't get rid of human habits either. Wait, when did the fog outside become so thick?" The driver rubbed his eyes. He couldn't understand why it was getting harder to see the road ahead. The next moment, the man's eyes went to his forehead from what he could finally see. Meanwhile, the scene of Luo Shi and Feng Yan's knife fight became awkward, and the hero never said anything to the girl. Tears appeared in the beauty's eyes, and she said she understood everything. It was at that moment that the driver hit the brakes, and everyone on the bus realized that something was wrong with the road. Fen lurched forward, barely able to hold on to the seat. Luo started to fall, but the young man managed to grab her hand. He sensed the danger earlier than the others, and wanted to save the girl. The beauty looked at Fen in surprise and asked what he was doing. The next moment, without answering, the hero covered her with his body, knocking her to the floor. Luo Shi looked confused. She said, "What are you doing? Our classmates are here." Feng Yan shouted loudly, warning everyone on the bus, "Get down!" A second later, all the windows shattered, showering the students with shards. The storm was so strong that it could lift a car weighing several tons into the air. The wind was so strong that it uprooted trees, and everything around us was spinning in a deadly dance. Meanwhile, all television channels across the country were broadcasting breaking news. Today at 3:22 p.m., a serious traffic accident occurred on the Chengguan Expressway, Daxing exit. A bus full of students crashed into an overpass. The number of injured and dead has not yet been confirmed, the correspondent continued to say from the scene. But the strangest thing is that the police closed the scene, not allowing medics to enter. Journalists did not see the wounded being taken out. The presenter added, "To find out the truth, our team found a well-hidden path." The woman invited her viewers to find the truth together, because it was a live broadcast. Suddenly, she screamed, "Wait! What are you doing?" At that moment, someone's hand covered the camera. The next moment, the equipment was snatched from the operator's hands and thrown to the ground. A man's foot in a high boot stepped on the journalist's camera. People around them saw a strange couple, a blonde young man and a beautiful woman with pink hair. "Staying in a city where you are not supposed to be will lead to death," the stranger said menacingly. The journalist shouted that this violated the right to freedom of the press. She promised the strange couple under the black umbrella that she would expose their secrets. The people did not pay any attention to the reporter, and walked away from the tape that fenced off the site of the tragedy. Suddenly, something under his feet caught the blonde's attention. He and his companion are frozen near the destroyed road surface. The young man asked the girl, "Do you smell that? It's so familiar." Suddenly, the couple received attention. Someone shouted, "Who let outsiders in here? Who are you and what are you doing here?" A policeman approached them. The man asked irritatedly, "Don't you know that you can't come and go as you please?" The policeman tried to chase the strangers away, but he did not scare them at all. A white-gloved man's hand touched the blonde man's jacket. At that moment, a pink-haired beauty intervened, grabbing the policeman's arm. She must have had martial arts skills, because she hurt the man very badly with one move. The next moment, the policeman saw the stranger's ID. He read, "Department of Special Investigations." The name on the ID was Wang Liang. In Chinese mythology and folklore, this is the name of an evil spirit. The policeman asked, "Is this a special investigation department that never opens criminal cases and has the right to make decisions on the spot?" The man continued to look at the documents and thought, "How can they send freaks like him to deal with incomprehensible cases?" Wang Liang brought the policeman out of his reverie, demanding a report. The official came to his senses, because despite all his displeasure, this freak was from the Special Investigations Department. The policeman showed the bus that had been involved in the accident. About 10 students and a teacher disappeared. Surveillance cameras in the vicinity did not find them either. The man said, "It's strange that we didn't find any evidence. It's as if the people disappeared into thin air." The blonde felt that the policeman was not telling him something. He said that they found a corpse in such a state that it was difficult to identify it. The man's appearance had undergone such significant changes that he could not be identified at the moment. A forensic examination revealed that the corpse had at least 2007 internal tears, and most incredibly, he was mummified less than 6 hours after the accident. Wang Liang smiled, and it seemed that he was interested in this information. The policeman approached the strange couple and asked if they could find any evidence. At that moment, a distressed woman ran up to the barrier tape. She screamed and rushed to the crime scene, refusing to believe that her son was dead. The mother could no longer control her emotions. Tears splashed from her eyes, and she begged the police to let her get on the bus. The policeman told representatives of the Special Investigations Department who witnessed the scene, "I heard that this woman lived with her only son. I can't even imagine what she's going through right now." Wang Liang did not answer, but he followed the woman closely with his eyes. The next moment, he told his partner, named Mi Tao, meaning peach, "From now on, follow up with every family of the missing students." The man added, "Every moment of every hour, wherever they are. I don't want there to be any blind spots." Feng Yan's mother was still trying to get to the scene of the tragedy. Mi Tao told her boss that she understood everything. The woman could not control herself. The stress and despair she experienced made her mother's behavior uncontrollable. It's time to go back to the moment when the classmates realized that something incredible was happening to their bus. Some unknown force picked up the bus and lifted it into the air, rocking it as if it weighed nothing. Feng Yan saw these images as if in a movie, and he thought it couldn't be real. He heard someone repeating his name over and over again. The hero opened his eyes, but it was still difficult for him to focus his vision. Suddenly he heard a voice. "Feng Yan, you've finally woken up." The teenager grabbed his head. It was heavy and painful. He thought, those voices, Xia Xiaofei and Luo Yi, why do they sound so far away? The young man wanted to lean his hand on the bed to get up, but he felt no support. Feng Yan realized that he was in a void, falling down. The next moment, the teenager reached some hard surface, hitting his back painfully. He saw both of his classmates. The guy closed his eyes to relieve the pain after the fall. Luo Shi rushed to him, tears in her eyes. The beauty hugged the hero. She was very happy that he was okay. Fen did not understand what had happened to them. He looked extremely dazed. A classmate asked his friends where they were and where everyone else was. Xia Xiaofei looked at Luo Shi with a questioning look. Both girls did not know what to say. Eventually, the girl with the lilac bob pointed up and explained that the others were on the surface. Her answer did not clarify the situation in the hero's mind. But then the young man followed his classmate's finger and saw the others, and at first glance it might seem that they were sleeping. The girls explained that they were the same until they woke up. What the teenagers saw was difficult to describe in words. Their friends seemed to be levitating in space, as if in outer space. Luo Shi asked Feng Yan in a trembling voice, "Is it possible that we are dead?" This guess stunned all three of his classmates. The hero did not want to believe this terrible assumption. They could not have died. The next moment, other classmates began to wake up and fall to the ground. The teenagers began to come to. They asked each other how it happened that they fell from the sky. Feng Yan realized that things were bad. They needed to do something to find out their situation. A bench appeared from somewhere, and the head of the class climbed on it, and he called his classmates. The young man urged the others not to panic and to call the police immediately. He asked whose phone was still working. The hero took his smartphone out of his pocket, but there was no signal. Other teenagers reported the same news. The children looked confused because it was some kind of devilry. Not a single phone was receiving a signal. One of the boys turned to Page E. "You read so much. Can you tell us what's going on?" The smart guy assumed that they were in the worst situation. The starosta asked the teenagers not to panic and to trust him. "I think this is Fushi's Road. The police station is right next door. Who knows this area and can go there to report the accident?" One of the young men raised his hand, but the wise man advised him not to worry. Page E turned to the headman with an unpleasant smile. "Whoever suggested it, let him go." The teenager replied, "I'm the starosta. I can't leave. I have to take care of those who will stay here." The children started looking for each other. No one knew what to do, but everyone was scared. Suddenly, Feng Yan took the floor. "I think we shouldn't split up. This fog is too thick, it's very strange, so don't do anything rash." My classmates were silent. Page E suggested that in this case he should go with the help of the beautiful Lao Shi. He explained his idea. A beautiful woman should go, because there will be more people willing to help her. The expression on Feng Yan's face did not bode well for the clever man. The bespectacled man noticed this and decided not to comment further. The hero told the others that their teacher was unconscious, and the driver had disappeared. The fog was so dense that you couldn't see anything behind it. Page E opened his mouth again and addressed his question to the old man. "In that case, who will be able to find the police?" He then added that the person who calls for help will have absolute authority. These words of the bespectacled man prompted the starosta to act. He jumped off the bench and said that he would go after the police himself. Fen watched the provocateur closely and noticed a subtle smile on his face. The head of the brave class headed toward the fog, behind which the unknown awaited him. Although the teenager was determined, sweat broke out on his face in terror. The starosta asked his classmates to stay here. He would be back soon with help. Luo Shi hoped that everything would be fine, but Feng Yan was skeptical. The bespectacled man stretched his hand forward, and from the outside it might have seemed as if he wanted to touch the air. But the young man managed to touch the fog with his index finger. Page E came to the conclusion that something was wrong with this fog. Meanwhile, the class headmaster had already taken a step into the pitch black. The young man thought, "The fog is too thick. I can't even see the road under my feet. Which way is the police station?" Suddenly, the teenager froze in place. His limbs did not respond to brain impulses and did not move. The guy could barely lower his head and look at his feet. What he saw would have stunned anyone. In a matter of seconds, his legs turned into skeletal legs. The young man's hands began to turn gray, which could indicate tissue necrosis. The next moment, the boy's classmates heard wild screams, and the children were very frightened. A thought came to Feng Yan's mind again. This is really bad. The next moment, the teenagers heard a request for help, and they immediately recognized the starosta's voice. The young man could barely move. He begged for help again and again. His legs had already been exposed to the bone, and this simply could not have happened without the influence of magic. The closer the headman got to his classmates, the better he became visible through the fog. The guys were about to rush to the aid of their friend, but Feng Yan's shout made them stop, and the young man ordered the others to stand. One of the teenagers shouted indignantly, "Are you a coward? Can't you see that he needs help?" The hero replied, "The situation is unclear now. Running out to help him could be even more dangerous." The children looked confused. What should they do in this case? The hero asked Xia Xiaofei, "Give me your clothes." The girl was stunned by this request. Fen explained his request. "Anyone who has any outerwear, give it to me." His classmates started throwing jackets and shirts at his feet. He began to tie them together. The teenager tried to speed up the actions of his friends because they needed to act immediately. The next moment, a long rope of clothes flew through the fog. It was long enough to reach the place where the headman was lying. Feng Yan shouted for him to grab it. The young man found the strength to grab the rope with his hand, which had already begun to wither away. The hero felt it and pulled on his end of the makeshift rope with all his might. He could see that the fabric was failing and starting to tear. Drops of sweat appeared on Feng's face. He was so tense. One more effort. The young man pulled with all his might, and their headman finally appeared out of the fog. The guy fell right on top of Fen, knocking him onto his back. He kept repeating the same word. Fog, fog, fog. At that moment, his classmates saw that the young man had turned into a skeleton. Suddenly, all those present noticed that the body of the unfortunate starosta began to disappear. The fog also began to dissipate, and the children saw the summer sky, with the full moon illuminating everything around them. Everyone present saw a stranger sitting quietly eating something. Under his feet lay the body of the starosta, who had been destroyed by the fog. The man sat on the bench as if nothing had happened. He said, "It's like looking at fresh fruit," followed by a pause. "But you just have to press a little bit and the fresh berry bursts." The stranger finished his strange thought. He wondered if there would be an exception this time. With that, he threw the strawberry into his mouth. The blond man's incomprehensible words and comparisons and the death of the headman stunned and confused Feng Yan. The fog finally cleared completely, and behind the bench on which the stranger was sitting, he could see the park and the night city with its lights. The school children looked around in surprise, wondering if they were lost in the middle of the city. The fat boy could not hold back his tears, but his sobbing irritated everyone around him. The young man wanted to go home. He had some homework left there that he did not have time to do. He barely managed to persuade his mother to go on this excursion, and when he returned home, he would be beaten again. The guy sitting next to me said angrily, "Shut up! You look like a man, but you cry like a girl!" The boy was silent, trying to restrain his emotions, but the tears in his eyes betrayed the child's true state. Suddenly, the young man's attention was drawn to the inscriptions on the ground with a twig. Feng Yan was writing something intently, not paying attention to the others. The fat guy asked his classmate what he was doing. The hero replied, "I try to analyze the facts and details we already know." It was at this point that their teacher finally came to. The man was scared. He did not understand where they were. The teacher got to his feet, grabbed his head with his hand, and said, "Why does my head hurt so much? Where did this thick fog come from?" The man had more questions than answers and wanted to know where the bus and driver had gone. He looked around dazedly, expecting the teenagers to explain something to him. The teacher approached each of them in turn, but the children did not respond, because they did not yet understand where they were. The man's face became more and more confused. He had not expected such an end to the school trip. The teacher's nerves gave out and he shouted, "Hey you, tell me where we are at last!" One of the teenagers replied, "Teacher, can you be quiet? No one wants to explain anything to you right now." The man really stopped talking and he looked confused. Feng Yan understood the teacher's condition and watched him silently. Suddenly, the beautiful Luo Shi grabbed the hero's hand. The boy looked back and asked what she wanted. He was a little uncomfortable talking to his classmate after her confession on the bus. The beauty blushed and said, "I really need to go to the bathroom, but I'm afraid to leave. Can Xiaofei come with me?" Feng Yan was stunned by his friend's question, and he didn't know what to say right away. Meanwhile, Luo Shi went behind the bushes. Xiaofei stood next to her. The girl was wearing a long dress, so she had to pick up the hem. Panties with a cute bear cub slid down the girl's slender legs to her ankles. The beauty crouched behind the bushes, watching Feng Yan closely so that he wouldn't spy. Her loyal friend promised to take care of this. The beauty sat down and thought sadly, "My image of the class beauty is ruined." Feng Yan and Xiaofei also felt uncomfortable standing behind the bushes. The next moment, they heard a loud sound of water and both blushed. The young man mentally begged his classmate to say something to calm the situation. The girl seemed to hear these thoughts. She looked at the boy's hand and asked what was in it. The hero looked at the piece of cloth himself. He said, "These are the remnants of our elders' clothes." This news stunned Xiaofei. She asked in confusion, "Isn't the headman gone?" Feng replied, "The headman's body disappeared, but I still have pieces of his clothes that I accidentally tore off at the time. There is no scientific explanation for this situation." The girl asked, "Will we have to sit in this fog all the time until we die?" The hero replied that this terrible situation could get even worse. Xiaofei's eyes grew even bigger and she looked scared. Feng Yan said a single word, "Food." This was the problem that could hasten their demise. Suddenly, the friends heard Luo Shi's voice. "Thank you for going to the bathroom with me. It's time to go back." The girl came out of the bushes and looked at her friends and asked what was wrong with their faces. The hero decided not to scare the beauty, so he answered, "Nothing. Let's go." They returned to their classmates, who continued to sit near the bench, captive to the deadly fog. The children asked each other when they could return home, but none of them had an answer to this question. "I can't see anything. Is it really night? I'm hungry." These were the sad conversations among my classmates. The teenagers sat with their heads on their knees, desperate. One girl complained to her friend, "I'm hungry too. I've run out of all the food I took with me on the tour." She wanted to know where the remaining cookies had gone. The young man replied that it was gone, because there was very little left. At the time, he was hiding a piece behind his back. The girl started complaining again that she was hungry. Suddenly, she noticed that her classmate had turned away and heard the rustling of the label. The girl asked what he was doing, and the boy lied and said nothing. She attacked the young man, trying to take his cookies. Hunger clouded the poor woman's mind, and she lost control of herself. The young man pushed the girl away and got to his feet. He said it was his food. The beautiful girl screamed, "You pushed me because of a piece of cookie. How could you? You like me." Meanwhile, the fat guy was looking around thinking, "There is nothing but fog in this ghost town. Why the hell did all this happen to me?" Suddenly, the young man had a terrible realization. "We could all die here. The fat man reached into his pocket for the food he still had left. He wasn't going to share the bar with anyone, but he started eating it quickly. Suddenly, the guy received a strong kick in the back. The student was pushed by the teacher. The man looked angry. The young man lost his balance and fell to the ground, with cookies and candy falling out of his pockets. The teacher silently picked up a bar of chocolate from the ground. The fat man looked around. His face was scared, but he still said that the food belonged to him. It seems that not everyone could withstand the test of hunger. Even the only adult among the teenagers could not cope. He punched the guy right in the face and shouted, "It's all mine now!" The teacher called the children little bastards. He seems to have gone completely crazy. The man kept shouting, demanding that the teenagers give him all the food. From that moment on, the whole class should listen to the teacher without unnecessary chatter. The man was shouting at the children, demanding that they bring their food to him as soon as possible. One of the boys said out loud what everyone else was thinking. "I think our teacher has lost his mind." The teacher called the teenagers devils and parasites. Luo Shi leaned against Xiao Fei, admitting that she was scared. Pei Ji did not respond to the madman's call to give him all their food. The teacher shouted again, "If you are this slow, this fat man like you is finished." Fang Yan thought that the man was really out of control. The hero's mind raced. In this murderous crowd, the one with the power is in charge. It was at this point that the teacher moved from words to deeds. He kicked the helpless girl who flew to the ground. The blow to the stomach was so strong that blood flowed from the victim's mouth. The madman shouted, "Who else dares to joke with me? Don't think you can hide anything. Give everything honestly." The man was eagerly waiting for the next student to bring his food. Now it was Van Land's turn to take a bow. This boy was outraged by the teacher's behavior, and he gritted his teeth in anger. The young man jumped to his feet and shouted, "Why the hell should I give you anything?" The boy continued his words to his classmates. "It's just an old teacher. He's just pretending to be so cool. You shouldn't be afraid of him. If they give away all the food, they will starve to death, so don't even think about it." Wang Lan shouted, "Give us our food quickly, or you will get it from my parents." The man smiled fearfully and replied, "Do you want your food back? Come and get it." Some of his frightened classmates tried to stop him, but Wang Lan exclaimed, "I'm not afraid of him. I will go and get our food back." The boy boldly took a step towards his crazy teacher. Meanwhile, the teacher was not going to return the supplies he received, and a pen flew out of his shirt sleeve. A terrible smile appeared on the man's face again. He was still exuding danger. Feng Yan realized that Wang Lan would not defeat the teacher. The young man warned his friend, exclaiming, "Get away from him as quickly as possible." Hearing these words, the guy took his eyes off the provisions. But it was too late. A pen with a sharp nib hit Van Lan's temple. The teacher's face looked very scary, as if he was enjoying what he had just done. The children began to crawl away from the madman in fear. The man smiled terribly and asked, "Now do you understand who the real leader is here?" Wang Lan clutched the wound with his hand. The teacher asked him if he was too confident. "You only rely on your parents, who have a lot of money. They yell at me every day and treat me like an idiot. Half of my life is already gone. You little rascals have no right to look down on me." He walked up to the fat man and grabbed him by the collar of his t-shirt. "Do you expect to go back to the normal world and complain about me? Do you want your rich parents to punish me?" the madman asked furiously. The fat coward started begging for help. His eyes were streaming with tears, and his nose was running with snot. The man pushed the boy to the ground and promised that they would never get out of here. The children didn't want to believe the teacher's words, but at that moment, everyone was scared. What if it was really true? "Look around you. Do you think this is fog? I have lived for many years and have never seen anything like this," the madman continued to shout. "There is fog everywhere! Fog, 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 and nothing else!" The teacher was having fun. "No more of this stupid head. No more disgusting school. No ugly, arrogant women." The man sucked in his nose. "My God, what fresh air. I love this damn place." The next moment, in a sharply changed voice, the teacher promised that no one would leave here alive. The teacher's words sounded like a curse, and hunger gripped everyone. Every hour, every moment, someone fell and lost consciousness. Fang Yan was still holding on, hoping to find a way out of this terrible situation. At that time, the children did not know what horrors were waiting for them. Luo Shi could barely hold on, trying to suppress her hunger. While the children were suffering, their teacher calmly consumed the food they had taken away. The man's eyes were glittering with red fire. He looked like he was possessed. "Good afternoon, dear friends. We continue to provide you with a live report from the scene. It is here that a very unusual car accident recently took place. Since the accident, the police have not commented. At the moment, there are no changes. Right now, you can see that a crowd of angry parents has already gathered outside the police station, demanding explanations. Let's listen to what they are saying. Several days have passed, and none of the students have been found yet." "Don't the police know anything?" asked one man. Another added, "They have time to ask us strange questions. but they have only sent a few people to search for the children. One woman was crying, worried about her daughter. Wang Liang silently watched his frightened parents. His girlfriend said, "We've been observing for several days now, and no one has noticed any strangeness." She asked her partner, "If we don't find the portal, what are we going to do?" The man didn't answer right away, and he continued to chew his fruit in silence for a while. Wang Liang then raised his face to the girl and said, "Keep looking. I have a lot of patience." The beauty wanted to know how long the children would be able to stay there. The man touched Mitao's chest. The reaction was immediate, and he was slapped in the face the same moment. The policeman was about to return to the station when a woman called him. She begged her husband to save her son. The mother was sure that her son was not dead. She had seen him. The man tried to calm the woman down, assuring her that she was delusional and that no one was there. Wang Liang told his friend, "There are always mothers who hallucinate when they are grieving. It's a pity." Suddenly the woman screamed, "I'm not crazy, I really saw my son." The representative of the Special Investigations Department heard the unhappy mother add, "In a cloud of fog." Wang did not get the cherry to his mouth. The young man asked Mitao who the woman's son was. The assistant handed him a tablet and pointed to the boy, adding that he was a 9th grade student. The man looked at the boy's profile. Fang Yan, 16 years old, height 178 centimeters, weight 63 kilograms, date of birth October 5th, 2002. Feng Yan's mother could not calm down and kept begging the policeman to save her boy. Suddenly, a plate of fruit and berries was shoved right under the upset woman's nose. Wang Liang was interested in the unfortunate woman's story and decided to talk to her. The man asked the woman to stay. He was smiling kindly. Apparently, he and his assistant invited Feng's mother to their office. After receiving a cup of fragrant tea, the woman began her story. "The night my son disappeared, I had a dream," said the mother. Wang Liang wanted to hear the details of this dream. The woman continued, "It's like Feng Yan is trapped in a cloud of fog and can't find his way out. I reached out to him, but he ran in the opposite direction. I'm trying my best to catch up with him, but I can't. But the next moment, Fan reappears right in front of me." The son called his wife. She was very happy and rushed to him. As soon as she stretched out her hand to the boy, it began to fall apart. And then suddenly, like a flower, right before my eyes, my son's face disintegrated into dry petals in an instant. The woman froze in place, not believing her eyes that she had lost her boy again. At that moment she woke up, sitting up abruptly on the bed and knocking a cup of water off the bedside table. The water spilled onto the floor and the woman looked at the puddle. She managed to see her son in the reflection, pulling a rope. "I really saw him. It was not a hallucination. I couldn't have confused my son with anyone else," the upset woman added in her heart. A representative of the Special Investigations Department asked his assistant if she had heard everything. Wang Liang had only one guess in his mind. Perhaps this woman is the portal. She wiped away her tears. Memories of her son made her suffer even more. Suddenly, she looked down into the cup and saw Fen again on the surface of the tea. The woman could not believe her eyes that it had happened again. She shouted her son's name loudly. It was at this moment, somewhere in another reality, that Feng Yan abruptly turned around when he heard his mother's voice. Xiao Fei noticed a change in her friend's face and asked what happened. He replied that he heard a familiar voice. The young man decided that he must have been imagining his hunger hallucinations. Luo Shi no longer had the strength to fight. Her eyes closed, and she lost her balance, falling onto her friend's shoulder. Xiao said, "Oh shit! Luo is completely weak. She's too hungry and doesn't have the strength to hold on anymore." Feng Yan glanced angrily at the teacher, who continued to eat, not paying any attention to the exhausted children. A drop of sweat appeared on the hero's face, and he tried to decide what to do next, how to save his classmates. All the children's thoughts were now devoted to one thing: food. It was unbearable to watch their teacher eat himself. There was only one thought in Luo Shi's head. Eat, Fan Yan thought. In this battle for food, they have lost. It is impossible to win. Suddenly, the man raised a packet of chips above his head and asked, "Who wants some?" "This bag of flavored chips in my hand." The teacher smirked nastily. This offer made the children, who had not yet fainted, eager to get these chips. The only thing that frightened the hungry teenagers was the pen in the teacher's hand, which had already hurt Wang Lan. One young man told another that he was very hungry. His friend warned him, "Have you forgotten what happened to Lan? Don't go near him." The man continued to abuse the children. "What's wrong? You don't seem to be hungry? I don't mind." The teacher opened a bag of chips and began to eat them with a crunch. He deliberately chewed loudly so that the students would go crazy with hunger. It was a real torture for the hungry teenagers. The bastard took another chip out of the bag and asked with a smile, "Doesn't anyone really want one?" No matter how much they were hungry, no one dared to approach the teacher. The teacher brought the chips to his mouth, about to take a bite. Suddenly someone shouted out, "I want one!" He was a young man with blue hair, and he could not resist the temptation. The man replied, "You? Well, are you hungry?" It was immediately clear that this was a trap. But the young man was unconscious from hunger, so he did not feel the danger signals. Meanwhile, the teacher threw the dog back into the bag and said he remembered the young man. "You used to despise me, and your father, the principal, came to me last time to check on me and called me a pig who crossed his path." Obviously, the man decided to take revenge for his past insults. He wanted to know if he remembered correctly. The boy's face became frightened, and he did not know what to say. Of course, it is not forbidden to want to eat. The teacher enjoyed the fact that he now had power over others. He had one condition. "You need to run around me like a pig 2 laps. And you need to bark like a dog. You couldn't stand this, young man." "What did you say?" The teacher replied, "What exactly do you not understand?" The boy turned back, saying he was not hungry. The director's son was not going to be humiliated like that. The teacher laughed. "You have a lot of character, but look at this place. You'll be able to show your character here for 2 days. But then the 3rd day will come." All the children understood where the man was going. Feng Yan continued to watch this circus in silence. But the clever Pei Jie thought that he would not last long. The teacher asked the principal's son if he could survive for 10 days without food. Without further ado, he fell to his knees, which amazed his classmates who were still conscious. The boy raised his head and barked like a dog. The teacher was able to break his pride. The boy continued to parody the puppy. He tried very hard to get food. This spectacle made the madman laugh very much. He was pleased with his invention. The man laughed out loud as he watched the director's son being humiliated. The teacher scoffed. "What a pity your cool dad can't see this. You're such an obedient puppy, just a morsel away." The young man is happy that he will now receive 1 miserable chip. He stretched his hand forward, hoping that soon he would finally satisfy his hunger. But the man was not yet satisfied with the teenager's humiliation. He deliberately dropped the chip on the floor. Before the boy could pick it up, the teacher crushed the potatoes with his foot. He was enjoying his joke. "Ouch, I missed. Too bad." The man added that this was all he could offer the boy now, and pointed to the crumbs with his foot. The bastard saw the young man hesitate. He asked, "Well, are you hungry?" The student's hands trembled as he gathered the pitiful crumbs. The boy sent a piece of food from the floor directly into his mouth. He lowered his hand to the ground again, greedily picking up the remains. Quickly throwing these miserable scraps into his mouth, he said it was delicious. The director's son ate very greedily, believing that this was the most delicious meal of his life. The teacher shouted, "Whoever is obedient will get food." The teenagers started hitting each other, competing for who would get at least a morsel. One of the girls' faces was bruised. One eye did not open. Hunger and despair turned children into real predators. The mad teacher enjoyed this spectacle. He kept repeating the same thing. "I just want you to be obedient." The fat man watched the principal's son. He could hardly restrain himself from attacking him with his fists and taking away his food. As he watched the other man eat, saliva collected in his mouth, which he quickly swallowed. The young man got to his feet, also deciding to become obedient in order to earn at least a crumb. Suddenly, someone grabbed his arm, trying to save him from humiliation. It was Feng Yan, and he asked his classmate not to do it. The fat man replied, "Yan, I am very hungry. He's crazy. I'll cheer him up a bit, and I'll get some food. It's okay." The hero looked down and replied that it would not be that simple. He explained that the teacher was demonstrating his power over them in this way. If no one has food, they'll go crazy with hunger, and then he won't be able to control this crazy crowd of people, Feng said. When everyone gets used to begging and constant agreement with it, the hero fell silent. Who didn't want to know what would happen then? Students will obey their teacher and do whatever he wants, Feng Yan explained. Then they will become real slaves in this fog. The fat man believed his classmate and stayed standing by him. Suddenly, the young man saw that the teacher turned his attention to Xiao Fei. The bastard said to the girl, "If you want to eat, then take off your clothes." Behind the girl, Luo Shi was lying unconscious. The man threw a bun in his hand and said, "Come on, take off your shirt." The beauty froze in place. Her eyes literally went all over her face, and she was silent. The madman asked, "What is it? Don't you want to eat? Your girlfriend might get worse." Luo Shi, not regaining consciousness, whispered barely audibly, "I'm hungry." Xiao Fei couldn't watch her classmate lose her last strength. The crazy teacher's hand approached the student's breast. At the last moment, the beauty recoiled, unable to overcome her disgust. This behavior of the wayward girl irritated the bastard. He approached the student again and ordered her menacingly, "Be obedient and undress yourself. If you don't follow my order, you'll see what happens to these people," the madman threatened. The beauty's eyes went to her forehead. This threat really scared her. Xiao Fei imagined her classmates killing each other before her eyes. Feng Yan saw that the beauty was hesitating and called out to her. The young man wanted to rush to them, but a fat man stopped him. "Don't go there. He could really kill someone." But there was no stopping the hero. He called the teacher a nasty scoundrel. Xiaofei was very scared, trembling and begging for help. But the teacher did not respond to her requests. He demanded that she quickly undress. The man was getting closer and closer to the defenseless beauty. The bastard smiled nastily and said, "I wonder what this girl tastes like." Fan Yan had not yet had time to come to the rescue of his friend. Suddenly something happened that could change the whole situation. Finally, another teacher who was returning from a field trip with her class, Teacher Zhang, came to. The fat man was surprised that the teacher fell with them. When the accident happened, everyone was confused for a long time. When the boy came to, he saw his teacher. She was badly injured and did not come to them for a long time. Back then, several girls took turns taking care of her. The fat man thought that everything would be fine now. The teacher was awake and would be able to protect them. Peiji smiled and thought, in the adult world, things are not so simple. Fang Yan also believed that things would not get better now and did not share the optimism of his fat classmate. The teacher approached her crazy colleague and there was a pause among them. The man looked confused. The teacher's appearance had ruined all his plans. The woman shielded Xiaofei and said, "She's too young. If the police find us, it will be difficult for you to explain all this." The man seemed surprised at first. His face seemed confused. But the next moment he laughed and said, "Shall I explain? Teacher John, I see you still don't understand what happened." "We are all going to die, do you understand? No one will come to help," the teacher exclaimed with a crazed expression. "This ghost fog is killing and turning people into mummies." He pointed to the side. "There has been no search and rescue for several days now, and no one has a signal on their phones. And the worst thing is that the mimicked body disappears." The woman asked where they were, who could help them, and why the police hadn't found them yet. "I'll be damned. Even if someone is going to rescue us, how long will it take?" the madman asked his colleague. Then he answered his own question. "2 more days and half of these people will die of starvation. We're dead." Teacher Zhang looked at her crazy colleague with disgust. The man said, "If you're trying to help this girl, then do it instead. We can have a good time before we die. I won't let you down." The woman was stunned by this offer. That ugly face wanted Teacher Zhang to undress in front of him. The woman was so dumbfounded that she did not know what to say to this bastard. The madman didn't want to wait any longer. "Well, are we going to keep standing like this? One of you has to take off your clothes today. Decide for yourself who it will be." The teacher shielded Xia Xiaofei with her body and asked the girl not to worry. Drops of sweat appeared on the woman's face. She said, "I will do what you want." Tears appeared on the student's face, and she did not want her teacher Zhang to get hurt because of her. The woman asked the boys to turn away. She was really ready to sacrifice herself for the sake of her student. But this humiliation was not enough for the bastard. He ordered no one to turn away. Licking his lips, he said, "Come on, Teacher Zhang, I'm waiting." The woman began to slowly undo the buttons on her white blouse. It was the turn of the button that hid the teacher's bra and cleavage. Suddenly someone shouted, "Stop!" and put his hand over the woman's chest. Fan Yan could not stand this madness. He stood up to defend his teacher. The madman shouted furiously, "You stinking scoundrel! Now it's your time to die." The angry man with the pen in his hand had already taken a step toward the boy, but the boy said something that made him stop. "I know where we are." Then the hero added something else that made everyone present listen to him. Fan Yan said he knew how they could all survive here. The teacher did not know what to say, but the students began to whisper, "Can we really get out of here?" The pause was long, and finally the madman asked the guy what he had just said. Fan Yan repeated his words. "I said I know where we are and I know how to survive." Zhang's teacher was worried about the boy and asked him not to tease the madman, but the young man reassured her, saying that he had a plan. The hero added, "You shouldn't go along with it, especially with such a scoundrel." The furious madman shouted, "If you keep talking nonsense, I'll beat you up." A hand with a pen with traces of blood on its feathers approached Fen. This makeshift weapon was in the brave guy's eye in a flash. Xia Xiaofei screamed. She was afraid that her friend would suffer at the hands of this madman. One more second and the sharp pen could end up in the hero's head. Suddenly, the bastard felt that it got significantly colder around him. He looked at Feng Yan's eyes and thought that this was not the look of a middle school student. Suddenly, Peiji intervened. He offered to listen to his classmate's plan. The teacher objected, saying, "Why listen to this nonsense?" The cunning young man asked the madman, "Don't you want to get out of here?" The man looked at the other students and became afraid. It seems that they are no longer afraid of him, and there are many of them. It's obvious which side will have the advantage. The bespectacled man asked Fan Yan to tell everyone his plan. The hero looked around at everyone present and paused to collect his thoughts. This silence irritated the mad teacher. He shouted, "Speak quickly!" Then he added, threatening the boy with a pen, "But you'd better not say any nonsense, especially not anything about me. Your classmates can tear you apart for that." Fang Yan was not afraid of his threats. He smiled and closed his eyes. "Everybody calm down. I'm sure no one has ever been in a situation like this. We are trapped, there is no communication, and there are no other people besides us. It's as if we were on a deserted island with no one looking for us. It also means that we are very far from salvation, said the hero. The teacher replied angrily, Don't talk nonsense. Who else knows what happened? This guy is just trying to trick us, the young man explained. The only thing I want to say is that we are now in City X. He went on to add that it was right in the middle of the third traffic ring in the city center. The boy's classmates looked stunned by the news. They began to deny it. You can't be serious. Are you kidding? If we were in the city of X, the police would have found us long ago, they said from all sides. Satisfied with the doubts of the others, the teacher said, I see you're trying to make a cheap effect on everyone. But suddenly a bespectacled man interrupted the conversation. Everyone be quiet. I believe in you, what Fan Yan is saying. Let's listen to what he has to say before we object. Satisfied that he had been listened to, Peiji asked Fan to continue. The hero drew the other's attention to the pavement near the bench and the lawn. The lawn is planted with a violet, which is mixed with violets along the edges, and then red plum and osmanthus bushes. The sidewalk leads to a park path and a staircase between the trees. The students began to look around. One girl said, It's really true, and I didn't even notice. A young man objected, There is something similar, but there are so many places around the world, we can't rule out that there are no identical ones. Feng Yan explained why he came to these conclusions, including the lampposts in the shape of magnolia flowers. All of this is of his City X traffic ring. But that's not the most important thing. The hero showed a piece of paper. I found this ad with a contact number, and it's definitely the area code of City X. It's not a simple coincidence. I'm sure it's the eastern part of the third traffic ring. The young man concluded that this was the exact spot where their bus had been in an accident. The children breathed a sigh of relief. They naively thought that once they realized where they were, they could easily return home. Suddenly, someone asked a question they had heard. If we're really in City X, why haven't they found us yet? Why aren't there any people walking around? Was the whole place like them, trapped in a poisonous fog? Besides, why are everyone's phones out of service? Feng answered their questions. It's true, there are still too many mysteries, but we have already identified our location, and there are probably convenience stores within a few hundred meters of us. Once we find them, we will have a chance to survive and have time to wait for help. Someone in the crowd shouted, But this fog has killed several people. How can we get out? Feng Yan didn't have time to answer because a sound caught his attention. The teacher went to the hero, saying that everyone was mummified in this fog. Coming closer, he asked the teenager, Are you going to save us all or kill us? The whole ninth grade class fell silent and waited with tension for the hero's answer. The bespectacled man noticed the other's condition and scratched his nose. The young man got to his feet. He thought that Fan Yan's idea was quite clear and easy to do, but he needed everyone to agree. Peiji wondered what his classmates would choose. The hero rolled his eyes and waited for the others to decide. The teacher was pleased with the general silence. You have already said so much nonsense. Do you still hope that you won't die here? Then tell me how we can get out of here, great detective. Fen looked around at everyone present, collecting his thoughts. Finally, the young man bravely answered, I'll go find the nearest supermarket myself. This self-sacrifice made the teacher change his behavior. The food he took away from the children fell under their feet. The man said, Fang Yan, in that case, I will give you everything you need. The children eagerly began to devour the returned food, but after a moment the teacher added, You can brag that you will find a way out, but if you fail. The madman promised that in that case the young man would die first. Gladkey, who was sitting next to Fan Yan, was very nervous. The hero answered the teacher, Don't worry, if it doesn't work out, I will die in the fog without your help. But the man was not going to calm down. With a strange smile, he asked, Do you really think that your death will end everything? The man approached Luo Shi and grabbed the exhausted girl's hand. Xia Xiaofei screamed, trying to grab her friend. The bastard said, holding the beauty by the neck, I see you have a good relationship with this girl. Let her stay with me for a while. The scoundrel brought his ugly face closer to the head of the frightened Luo. If you deceive me, you know what will happen, the madman threatened, touching the cheek of the frightened beauty with his tongue. The girl could only say the name of her hero, her dream, or that he would save her. Feng Yan shouted, Let her go! You must come with me and Liang Da! After calming his emotions, the young man added that it would take 3 people to put his plan into action. The man replied that it would be difficult to do so. After all, he has to take care of everyone here, so he couldn't leave. He was not going to put himself in even more danger. The teacher turned to the students. Come on, who wants to go with these heroes? Then I will give you even more food. The young men were silent. None of them considered themselves brave enough to do such a thing. Then suddenly someone decided to take a decisive step. It was the bespectacled Peiji in person. His determination surprised his classmates. Fei Yan also looked stunned. It seems that he did not expect such a partner. Now the three boys stood in front of a wall of dense fog. The hero asked the bespectacled man if he was sure he wanted to do this. Peiji replied, "It will certainly be difficult, but I also want to do something for everyone." Liang Da was shaking with fear. He asked, "Could the same thing happen to us as to the headman?" Feng Yan was silent, staring intently at the wall of fog. Finally he answered, "If my guesses are correct, we have a chance." After these words, the young man ordered his assistants to go forward. The other classmates followed them with frightened looks. The eyes of the beautiful Luo Shi filled with tears. She was very worried about whether Feng would return alive. The girl could not hold back her emotions, and tears flowed from her eyes. At this time, the heroes were already in the fog. Suddenly, Yan ordered everyone to stop. Liang Datak could not calm his chills. He asked what was wrong, grinding his teeth. The hero explained, "Last time the Starosta came to this very place. We need to check if anything has changed." Peiji agreed. "Yes. At that time, we could see that he was still fine." Feng Yan stretched his hand forward, trying to test his own theory. The guy immediately saw all 5 of his fingers start to turn dark. Liang asked his friend what he was going to do, frightened. Peiji remained silent. Only the sweat that rolled down his cheek betrayed his tension. The hero still held his hand in the same position. It was an experiment on which lives depended, so it had to be completed. Gritting his teeth, Feng plunged his hand even deeper into the fog. Liang Da covered his eyes with his hands and screamed, "Feng Yan is about to turn into a mummy." The more reserved Peiji ordered his classmate to shut up and watch. The hero himself closed his eyes to avoid seeing his hands become the hands of a mummy. But the very next moment, he mastered his fear and forced himself to look forward. His arm was fine, and the theory was confirmed. The young man took a deep breath and thought, as expected. Finally, he told his friends, "It seems to be safe, at least up ahead." The fat man could not believe his ears. "What does that mean? We're not going to turn into a mummy?" A wise man said, "No matter how strange things happen, there is a rule to everything." Peiji added, "Although I don't know what kind of fog it is, we have all been safe these past few days. This means it is not causing harm in any particular area." "Feng Yan, do you want to find an area safe from fog?" he asked with a smile. The hero did not answer this question. He only said, "You don't need to follow me any further. I'll go alone." The frightened Liang Da continued to stammer, "Where are you going?" The young man replied simply, "Maybe not to the safest place." Gladkey tried to stop the guy, but Peiji silently watched the hero's actions. This young man was not going to take any chances. The brave Feng Yan took a step forward, about to find out what awaited him. He put his hand out again, approaching a part of the unknown. The hero swallowed, a copious amount of sweat covering his face and neck. The young man's hand was slowly but surely approaching the deadly fog. Frightened, Liang Da wanted to ask the captain of their small unit what they should do. Suddenly he saw Feng Yan disappear into the fog, and the fat man screamed. He hoped to hear back that the other one was fine. Meanwhile, the teachers, left without Feng Yan, decided to settle the matter. The man shouted, "This young man spoke confidently. He ate my food, but in the end he died in the fog. And you still dare to mention him in front of me?" He attacked the frightened teacher. But the woman replied, "What if those brave guys didn't die?" The madman smiled and asked, "Not dead?" But the very next moment he shouted, "Those 3 bastards disappeared into the fog 2 days ago. If food could be found just around the corner, as that fool said, why haven't they returned yet?" Teacher Zhang did not know what to say to that. Suddenly, both adults noticed Luo Shi whispering, "God help Feng Yan. Don't let anything happen to him." This prayer of the unfortunate girl angered the mad scoundrel even more. He did not know love, so he could not understand what the beautiful woman was feeling. The bastard waved his hand, wanting the girl to shut up. A red slap mark appeared on the face of the fragile beauty. Luo Shi lost her footing and fell to the ground. The scoundrel did not calm down. He roughly grabbed the girl's elbow. Bringing his face closer to hers, he exclaimed, "That rascal is already dead, haven't you heard? Your Feng Yan deceived me for food. He deserves to turn into a mummy." The bastard mocked the beauty. But suddenly the girl found the strength to answer the bastard. "Feng Yan could not have died. I believe in him," Luo Shi said, looking directly into the eyes of the madman. The scoundrel did not expect such a selection from a fragile beauty. Out of his own powerlessness, the man hit the girl again, and she fell to the ground. She was in great pain, but Luo gritted her teeth to keep from crying. A crazy teacher asked his students, "Do you know why I haven't touched you until now? Because I was hoping that those 3 would make it. But now it's clear that they're not coming back." The scoundrel looked at the unfortunate Luo Shi and added, "There's no point in leaving you now." These words of the bastard made the beauty really scared. The girl's big eyes reflected the figure of a madman reaching out to her with his hands. But the teacher was relentless. He tore the unfortunate girl's dress. The beauty begged for help, but no one was in a hurry to intervene. Her classmates sat with their eyes on the ground, ignoring the girl's pleas for rescue. Among the whole class, only Xia Xiaofei rushed to defend her friend. The men hissed menacingly, "That's it, you're finished!" The next moment, he punched the beauty with all his might right in the stomach. The girl coughed up blood and fell to the ground, unable to stand on her feet. Luo Shi shouted her friend's name. She was very sorry that she had suffered because of her. But at that moment, the scoundrel switched to her again. "Before, I could only watch you come and go in your luxury cars to a nice school. All I could do was mop the floor, carry things, and clean the toilets. It's a really terrible feeling." But now the scoundrel felt like God, believing that he would not be punished. He was smiling his crazy smile. "Here I can do whatever I want." Xiaofei exclaimed, "Luo Shi." She was afraid for her friend, but she could do nothing else. The girl thought, everyone is so powerless from hunger that they can no longer resist it. The beautiful girl screamed, begging the teacher to stop, and suddenly he did stop. Suddenly the girl realized what had happened. Behind the scoundrel's back stood teacher Zhang with a stone in her hand. The woman explained, frightened, "I saw a piece of brick on the other side." Luo Shi rose to her feet and threw herself into the teacher's arms, the bastard lying motionless on the ground. Zhang stroked the girl's head, trying to calm her down. "Don't cry, little one. It's okay." Suddenly the beauty's expression changed again, and her eyes went to her forehead. The teacher noticed the changes, but she did not feel the danger lurking behind her back. The vile scoundrel came to his senses. He grabbed the woman by the hair and put a pen to her face. "I see that you are very eager to die." The next moment, a sharp feather dug into the woman's skin near her eye. The teacher screamed loudly. She was in great pain. Luo Shi backed away, tears pouring down her face. But it turned out that she was right. Feng Yan and the two others who had gone with him returned safe and sound with bags of food. The students could not believe that they had been saved from starvation. Pei Ji picked up a bag of food and said, "Friends, we found some food so we can hold out for a while longer." The children couldn't take their eyes off the mesmerized package of food. But the next moment, they all rushed to the smart guy, thinking he was cool. Liang Da said to Fan in anger, "He took all the glory for himself, but it was actually your plan." The hero replied with a smile, "It's okay. The most important thing is that everyone has food now." Suddenly, the young man spotted teacher Zhang and Luo Shi and rushed over to them. The beautiful woman said with tears in her eyes, "Feng Yan, you don't know what happened here after you left." The hero understood everything without words when he saw the state of the girl's dress. He turned his gaze to teacher Zhang. She was running a fever, and trickles of blood were running through her fingers, which she held to her face. Looking around, the hero tried to find his friend Xia Xiaofei with his eyes. Finally, he saw the girl lying on the floor holding her stomach. Everything he saw stunned the teenager, and rage rose in his soul. The hero was not going to take it anymore. He saw a baseball bat on the ground and picked it up. The young man swung it, about to drop it on the teacher's head. Suddenly, someone put a hand on his shoulder. It was Pei Ji, and for some reason he decided to intervene. Angry, Feng asked his classmate, "Do you want to save him?" The young man replied, "Of course not, but such issues need to be addressed collectively." The clever man adjusted his glasses with a smile and offered to judge the rascal. Feng Yan hadn't yet managed to control his anger, so he asked in surprise, "Judge." Pei Ji explained his thought process. "If you want to get out of here, it's important to think beyond logic." The young man believed that people's moods were also very important to consider. Meanwhile, somewhere in the headquarters of the Special Investigation Department, Wang Liang was looking at a photograph of Fan's mother. The man was deep in thought and did not notice when Mitao entered his office with a plate of fresh fruit. The girl asked her boss, "Can this woman really be a portal?" Wang Liang replied, "I don't know. There is never any logic to finding his location, and there are no people who know where he is." He did not take his eyes off the photo on the tablet. Mitao said, "It has been so long and we have not been able to find the location of these students." She did not expect her question to make her boss laugh. When he calmed down, he looked at the beauty and said, "Your naivety is incompatible with your appearance." The girl was angry at her partner's words. Wang Liang added that it didn't matter where they were. At this time, he was showing different places on the city map. "They can even be in this room, in a park, a store, or a movie theater. We can neither see nor touch them." The man added, "The only thing we need to find out as soon as possible is where the portal is." He was sure that everything would be easily resolved then. The hero's mother remained in their laboratory. By fitting the woman with various sensors, they tried to understand whether she was really a portal to another dimension. Mitao said sadly, "It's been 2 weeks since the accident." Her boss replied, "Yes, someone should find something soon." The man believed that time was the real key to any solution. "It's time to return to the parallel world." The scoundrel began to come to his senses. The next moment he shouted, "Don't make noise! Shut up now!" Liang Da was the first to notice that the teacher had woken up. He called Feng Yan and everyone else. The man was sitting bound hand and foot. Realizing his condition, the scoundrel shouted, "You bunch of little bastards! How dare you tie me up! Untie me now!" The bespectacled man said with a smile, "No need to rush, this is just the beginning." The hero said, "We don't want to do anything bad, but you must promise that you will not hurt anyone else because of your selfishness and self-assertion at the expense of the weak." The rascal replied, "Are you pretending to be good? You were gone for 2 whole days. You ate and got drunk and then decided to come back? And you dare to talk to me about selfishness?" Liang Da could not help but shout, "Are you trying to throw mud on us? We climbed very fast." Suddenly the boys heard one of their classmates say, "You really walked for 2 whole days. We almost died of hunger." Other children began to support the boy, saying that the boys had been gone for a really long time. Fan Yan was stunned by the news. The young man thought in confusion, "What an unexpected twist." He told the others, "We definitely didn't walk that long. You must be mistaken." My classmates responded, "We've been waiting for you for a long time. Everyone can't be wrong. What happened to you?" Liang Da decided to tell us what happened. When Feng disappeared into the fog, the young man also dared to dip his hand into it. Overcoming his own fear and gritting his teeth, he finally decided to do it. The young man followed his friend, but he was afraid to open his eyes. "Yan, have I already started to turn into a mummy?" the fat man asked, frightened. Peiji called his classmate a jerk. Only then did the boy finally dare to open his eyes. Looking down at his hands, he breathed a sigh of relief. Liang Da laughed merrily, happy to see that he was okay. Fan Yan told his assistants, "It looks like this area is still safe." The guys looked ahead. The fog gradually cleared, and now they could see high-rise buildings through it. The hero explained to his classmates that they needed to move on. Now it's the smart guy's turn to step forward to test the fog for lethality. This test was successful, and the young man put the stone on the ground to mark the safe area. The boys slowly walked forward, changing places over and over again. Liang Da looked very frightened each time. Feng Yan did everything calmly and deliberately, hoping that they would get lucky. Peiji's arm was not injured again. The fat man was also not injured. And this time the hero was lucky. The guys came a few steps closer to their goal. Fen decided to take a few more steps forward. Frightened, Liang Da asked his friend to be very careful. Ochkarik said, "We've been here for an hour, and during this time we've made several dozen steps forward. The further we go, the more dangerous it becomes." The hero looked back at him and smiled encouragingly. He realized that he had to be careful, but there was no time to waste. The next moment, Feng Yan decided to risk his own life and took several steps forward at once, quickly disappearing into the fog. Suddenly, the guy froze in place. He saw something impressive ahead. The guys may know what made him stop. Tolstoy froze in place, trying to figure out if what he was seeing was true. It turned out that they had managed to get to the supermarket, which is really the city center. Liang Da continued his story. "Then we picked up some food, and immediately went back the same way. At most, we were delayed for 2 or 3 hours. But how could 2 days have passed?" All his classmates looked at Feng Yan, expecting him to explain everything. Luo asked the boy what would happen to them in the end. The clever Peiji looked his friend straight in the eye and asked him if he understood everything. The hero replied that he had only one assumption. Luo Shi wanted to know what the object of her love meant. Both boys came to the same conclusion. Maybe we are locked not only in space, but also in time. Meanwhile, the hero's mother was still in the laboratory of the Special Investigations Department under the supervision of scientists. Wang Liang and his assistant observed the study. When the two entered the ward, the scientist greeted them politely. The man asked the scientist if he had managed to get in touch, and he shook his head. Wang said, "It's already been 4 days and we haven't been able to contact her once. Isn't she a portal?" The scientist explained fearfully, "This temporary connection is actually very unstable." Mitao asked, "We can only measure it, but we can't fully control it?" Her boss explained, "To create a portal, you need some powerful common thoughts and memories to emerge on both sides. You need the fluctuations of the brain waves to exceed those of an ordinary person. But technology can't solve this problem," added the detective. "Based on the data we have, these two, as mother and son, should do the best." Mitao asked, "Is there no one else who could create this portal besides them?" After some thought, Wang Liang said that there was one more person. The man raised his hand and pointed to the photo of another young man on the tablet. Peiji could be him, but in this case, it's much more dangerous, summarized the investigator of the Special Investigations Department. Meanwhile, the prisoners of the other world were stunned by the conclusion they came to. It turned out that not only space, but also time limits their freedom. Outside the fog, time passes differently. This is the only explanation for such a huge difference in perception. Xia Xiaofei wanted details, so she asked Fan Yan what he meant. Hero explained, We were not only stuck in the fog, but also faced with the problem of deviating from real time. Classmates didn't understand what this aberration was, and could it affect their return? The class began to panic. The kids were afraid they wouldn't be able to get out of here and go home. The hero tried to reassure the students, because panicking in a situation like this is the worst. Suddenly, Feng Yan and everyone else heard a wild, crazy laughter. It was the bound teacher who was chortling, the remnants of reason seeming to have left him. The man did not hold back his own emotions, his strange behavior frightening the children even more. Liang Da walked closer to the teacher and pushed him. The young man irritatedly muttered, "Psycho, what's so funny?" These words from the student finally silenced the man. But seeing the teacher's gaze, Liang lost his resolve and hid behind Yan's back. The man gritted through his teeth. "I'm laughing at you idiots because in a situation like this, you still hope to go home. You think if you find food, everything will be fine right away. Third Ring Road supermarket, maybe this guy is fooling us all," suggested the teacher. "Whatever time and space, there's no way to get out of this hell," he added with a maddening smile. The teacher was silent for a moment to catch his breath. "But now we're just all waiting to die together," he exclaimed the next moment. Glancing around at the children, the man saw that his words had startled them. But suddenly a wooden stick came close to his face. It silenced the madman. This turn of events really scared the cocky teacher. "There are so many problems now, but the first one to solve is you," Peiji said. These words of the smartass really startled the man. He gritted his teeth and answered nothing. The guy smiled, pleased with the reaction his behavior had elicited. "This accident made us wander around here with no way to get home, experiencing all sorts of horrible things," Pei said, addressing his classmates. "I agree. It's the right thing to do. We're all exhausted, myself included." The bespectacled man continued his speech. The frightened children kept their eyes on him, in which there was hope besides terror. "How much longer can we survive here? A week, a month, or a year? No one knows. In any case, you have to have comrades around you that you can trust and rely on. But also, at a time like this, there are people who cause much more harm with their selfishness," Peiji said, threatening the teacher with a baseball bat. "Takes away food, beats students, bullies girls," the smartass continued to say. "Even our wonderful teacher Zhang was injured by that bastard. I wouldn't want such an evil and horrible adult around us. He deserves to be punished for everything he's done." Peiji finished his speech. Most of the classmates supported the guy's words. Everyone wanted to punish the teacher. Scum looked scared, he asked, turning to the smartass. "What are you going to do?" The bespectacled man put a finger to his mouth as if contemplating punishment. It was his gesture that drove the teacher to a state of wild terror. After pausing for a moment, Peiji quietly whispered, "You should be killed." The other students began to incite the bespectacled boy to punish the teacher, to avenge teacher Zhang. The man wanted to say something, but he was too scared. "Yes, he has caused pain to each of us, and he should definitely pay for his actions," Peiji said. The young man held up a baseball bat and asked his classmates, "Who's first?" It seems that this turn of events was not expected by the other children. They looked confused. It turned out that everyone was not against committing a massacre of the teacher by other people's hands, but they were not ready to take part themselves. Xia Xiaofei asked Feng Yan, "There's something wrong with Peiji. Why does he want to do this?" The hero was silent. He was thinking of what to answer his friend. Luo Shi looked confused and scared at the same time. She couldn't believe her own ears. Teacher Zhang shouted, "What are you going to do? You don't need to make a mistake." The woman was about to intervene, but someone grabbed her arm. It was Fen. He asked her to wait. The woman looked back and replied, "I'm a teacher, I'll stop them." The character looked frustrated. He said, "I'm afraid there's nothing more you can do." The bat was picked up by one of the guys. He was shaking and looked scared. The teacher saw the young man's condition and said, "Scoundrel, do you think you have the courage? Come on, hit me on the head, you do that, and no one will ever threaten you again," the madman added. "You youngsters who eat the milk bread brought by your parents every day would dare to kill a man," exclaimed the teacher. The boy continued to tremble, his eyes full of terror. He let the bat out of his hand, but someone else picked it up for the young man. The bespectacled man put the weapon back into the hands of his frightened classmate. Peiji whispered in his ear, "Don't you want to take revenge? Remember what happened before?" The bespectacled man continued to press the guy, snapping at him that everyone around him was watching and laughing at his indecision. Pei tried to convince the confused young man. "It's all the fault of the teacher sitting in front of you. He should be punished." The man was truly frightened. He fell silent and kept his gaze fixed on his executioners. The smartass's words seemed to help. His classmate stopped shaking and his gaze became confident. The young man with firm hands brought the baseball bat to strike. Teacher Zhang tried to stop the student. The woman shouted, "Stop! Don't do that!" Peiji looked at the teacher with a questioning look. The woman told him he was still a student. If the boy kills the teacher now, what will he do next? Smarty Pants inquired of her. In that case, what do we do now? Let this scumbag go? Teacher Zhang replied, let's just tie him up tighter and make sure he can't bring harm to people anymore. There's enough food now. Peiji asked the woman if she knew what they saw when they left. To the teacher's mute question, he explained, this world is no different from our normal world. The supermarket is full of all kinds of goods. The guys saw empty and clean restaurants with lights on. They saw clean parks and streets, and it was very strange. But not once did they encounter people or animals, or anything living at all. The bespectacled man asked the teacher, do you know what that means? In this world only we can defend ourselves, exclaimed the young man. The expression on his face now resembled that of a madman. He approached Teacher Zhang and said, do you want this bastard to be among us all the time, controlling and intimidating us? Do you really want him to treat us like dogs and humiliate us? Peiji continued to press. The adult woman looked confused by the words of this know-it-all. She did not immediately find something to answer. Suddenly, Zhang's attention was turned over by the distinctive sound of impact. The bespectacled man's words had achieved their purpose. A young man with a baseball bat in his hands brought his weapon down on the teacher's head. Now the guy's face was no longer scared. It had a crazy smile on it. The man fell to the ground. The girls could not contain their emotions and screamed. The teacher did not faint and also screamed loudly. He was in a lot of pain. The young man who hit him was still smiling strangely. Drops of sweat appeared on his face. Peiji put his hand on his shoulder, encouraging him for this act. The bespectacled man said to the guy, now he won't dare mock you. After these words, his weapon fell out of the manipulation victim's hands. It was as if the boy had just realized what he had done. The student fell to his knees with an expression of despair on his face. Wang Lan raised his bat next. He also wanted to avenge his humiliation. The guy with the pen wound on his cheek said, I've waited too long for this moment. The startled teacher said, Wang Lan, you won't hit me. But the victim of his abuse had a different opinion on the matter. The young man did not hesitate to bring the bat down on the teacher's head and ordered him not to scream. Behind him, there were many more students waiting for their turn. Blood appeared on the teacher's head. He couldn't believe what was happening. But his victims no longer hesitated. Blow after blow, a baseball bat came down on the man's head. The classmates encouraged each other. Hit him with all your might. Hit him in the face. Don't spare him. Now it's my turn. Peiji looked satisfied that his plan had worked. He silently watched this assassination. Meanwhile, Teacher Zhang whispered, Wrong. It's all wrong. Stop it. Luo Shi turned to Feng Yan. If this continues like this, someone will really die. Is there anything you can do to stop them? The hero replied, Everyone is a source of fire. Fire can warm people, but it can also harm them. The flames of the crowd became a monster that burns everything in its path. The teacher's body now bore little resemblance to a human body. It was more like a bloody mass. The students looked at what they had done. Many of them had smiles on their faces. Peiji held out the bat to Feng Yan, saying that it was now his turn. The young man inquired, In his condition, is my intervention still necessary? Smarty Pants corrected his glasses and replied, Sure. He wanted everyone to watch Fen do what they were doing. In such an unusual time, we must be together. I need your courage and your wisdom, Feng Yan, Pei added. The young men looked each other straight in the eyes. It was unclear how the confrontation between the two class leaders would end. The teacher gave a sign of life, he whispered, begging them to stop and promising he wouldn't hurt anyone else. The bespectacled man looked at his victim in silence, a creepy smile frozen on his face. Peiji did not respond to the pleas. He believed that evil must be destroyed. He took a step toward the teacher, saying, Now you will go to the other world. Smarty Pants brought the bat over his head for one last swing. Teacher Zhang cried out, unable to believe her own eyes. Could her students really be so cruel? Wang Lan and the other classmates who took part in beating up the teacher just watched what was happening. Pei ruthlessly brought the bat down on the man's head and said, Rest in peace. Blood splattered directly into the assassin's face, staining his glasses. But the teacher still didn't die. Suddenly he whispered, puffed up. The victim's last words were, Peiji, you tricked me. The bespectacled man finally let the weapon out of his hands, the bat falling to the ground. Smartass was completely calm. He took off his glasses and wiped them clean of the traces of blood. He turned away from the slain teacher and said, turning to the others, Now we can get out of here. The classmates stared silently at the man's named corpse, the children looking stunned. It was as if they had just realized what they had done. But the very next moment, the cunning Peiji had achieved what he was aiming for. The teenagers recognized him as cool. From the crowd we heard, At last this old man is dead. How wonderful that Peiji is with us. Otherwise I don't know what would have happened to us. Feng Yan was silent, a worried expression frozen on his face. The classmates began to take their first steps into the fog, hoping to get out of this trap as quickly as possible. Wang Lan was the first. Taking a few steps forward, he silently froze in place. The young man saw something that made him stop. After coming to his senses a bit, he was able to utter, "At last." Everyone else now also saw what Wang Lan saw. Xia Xiaofei confusedly muttered. Fang Yan was right. Luo Shi stood behind her back. She stunnedly put her hand to her mouth. The fog began to clear, and the children saw that they were indeed in the city of X. The teens rushed forward. They thought they could get home soon, not realizing they were in a different reality. Pei Ji advised others not to go into the fog light, and then everyone would be safe. Smarty Pants looked cheerful. He really thought all their hardships were behind them. Feng Yan cautiously asked his classmate, "Aren't you afraid that something else might happen?" Pei replied, "After being depressed for so long, you need to let them relax a little and let off some steam." Meanwhile, the kids ran into the supermarket. They were overwhelmed by the large selection and started grabbing spolikas of everything. One of the young men grabbed a packet of chips and quickly opened it. Tears came to his eyes, for he had never thought chips could be so delicious before. Wang Lan said, "That's a lot of food. We all together won't eat that much in a month." One of the young men held out chocolate to the girl. He had liked her for a long time. But the beauty pushed the guy's hand away and the candy fell to the floor. The angry classmate said, "Now you remembered about me? Thanks to this incident, I realized what kind of person you really are." She looked back at the bespectacled man and added, "Compared to an egotist like you, Pei Ji is truly the hero of our class." Now all the girls thought the smart guy was an incredibly attractive savior. The beauties surrounded the bespectacled man and praised him tirelessly. Luo Shi asked Fang Yan why the latter was so aloof. The young man remained silent but kept his eyes on Pei Ji and his female supporters. The hero was thinking about something. Suddenly an idea came into his head. The next moment he asked his classmates to take out their phones. Xia Xiaofei was surprised by this request. After all, no one had a signal. But Fei repeated his request in a confident voice. The girls looked surprised by Yan's request. They hesitated a bit. When they finally pulled out their phones, they saw that the time and date on them were different. The hero is convinced of his assumption. The young man said, "It's really like this. We didn't just feel these movements of time. Time is really different." Luo Shi asked confusedly, "But what could it mean?" Feng Yan replied that he didn't understand what the matter was yet himself. The only thing the hero was sure of was that his class was stuck in some other X city. Belle repeated her question. She was utterly puzzled. Suddenly all the children flinched at the sound of a bottle being uncorked. Someone opened the wine and poured it into a glass. It was Pei Ji. He sat on a chair and enjoyed an alcoholic beverage. The smart guy told his classmates that this wine is great. The bespectacled man looked at Fang Yan through his wine glass. He thought, "Fang, a new scene is about to start." Pei wanted the young man to finally make his choice. Suddenly, the teenagers heard a scream. Luo Shi, Xia Xiaofei, and Fang Yan looked in the direction where the sound came from. It turned out that it was Fat Liang Da who was shouting. He was lying on the floor hugging sweets, and one of his classmates was kicking him. No one rushed to the Fat Kuma's defense. Everyone watched the beating in silence. Some of the children looked frightened and surprised by the situation. The young man who mocked and taunted Liang Da said, "You're so fat. All you know is eating and eating and eating." The unfortunate man wept in pain and humiliation and apologized to his executioner. The bastard swung around, about to hit the poor fat man. He wanted to take everything from him. But the guy's fist didn't make it to his victim's body. This time, Fang Yan decided to intervene. He intercepted the rogue's arm. The hero squeezed his classmate's wrist hard, forcing him to stop. Fan tossed the scumbag into the nearest grocery rack. The enraged, insolent man shouted, "Fang Yan, what the hell are you doing?" The hero calmly replied, "I'm the one to ask you, what are you going to do?" Toth explained his actions. "That fat bastard took my tin can that was here, so I called him right away to give it back." "What other questions?" Xia Xiaofei intervened in the conversation. "What do you mean your jar? It's not your family's store. Why can't other people take it?" The rascal shouted, "It's none of your business. I looked at it first, so it's mine." This answer only made the classmate angry. Fang Yan asked her to calm down. The hero cast a serious look around at everyone present. The children looked confused. They looked intently at their classmate, waiting to see what he would say. Fan finally said, "You don't think you're already safe, do you? As long as the city is in fog and we have no communication with other people, there is a risk that some danger will appear at any moment," explained the hero. The young man asked his classmate, who was punching the fat man, "Do you really think we should fight while in a situation like this?" But he disagreed. The guy replied with a smile, "Don't be a panhandler. What could happen?" Suddenly, one of the classmates who was behind the others decided to support Fang Yan. It was Pei Ji. The sly, bespectacled man said, "I think Yan is right. As I said before, the more time we've been here, the friendlier we should be. While supplies are plentiful here, we also have to realize that there is a simple truth, and it can run out. I believe it's still necessary to ration food." The hero did not comment on these words in any way, only glanced worriedly at the smartass. One classmate said she agreed with Peiji's words. A slender blonde girl named Shen Yue decided to support the smart guy. Luo Shi and Xia Xiaofei looked at the girl in surprise. The classmates were not very happy about this girl's appearance. They remembered how she used to pretend to be half dead. The girls were convinced it is at such times that a person's true personality is revealed. Shen Yue said, "Any collective should have a core, a leadership team, so that the whole thing doesn't turn into chaos." After the previous crisis, our classmates' abilities became obvious to everyone, the blonde added. She felt that the core of their collective should be Peiji. Smarty smiled faintly. He liked the blonde's words. Other classmates also supported him. Yes, Pei is best suited for this role. I'll be calm if Peiji is in charge. Suddenly someone's voice was heard. But there's another person who deserves to be in charge. The boy who was bullying the fat man shouted, "We're all in the same class. Then why should I listen to him?" Fang Yan replied with a question. "We're all in the same class. Then why can you get yourself a canned food and Liang Da can't?" The scoundrel found nothing to reply, only gritted his teeth viciously. He turned and walked away without answering anything. Peiji stood behind the hero's back and looked at the back of his head. The smart guy's gaze was so heavy that Feng felt it. The bespectacled man remained silent, but judging by the expression on his face, another cunning plan was brewing in his head. A little later, the kids ventured out into the city and looked around. Of course that the girls were interested in clothing and accessory stores. A classmate told her friend, "This is the first time I've touched a Gucci purse. It's like a dream." Shen Yue walked out of the fitting room. The other girls excitedly said that this set suited her very well. It was like she was a Hollywood star. Luo Shi decided to intervene. The girl said, "This is a bad idea, you know. If other people find out." But judging from the other girls' reactions, they disagreed with the beauty's words. One of her classmates said, "Other people? Do you see anyone else here?" And another added, "If you're so scared, don't take anything, but you have no right to control us." Shen Yue smiled and took off her manteau. She said, "Don't talk to our beauty like that. After all, Luo Shi doesn't need to dress up to look beautiful." Then she added, "No, but if I were you, I'd probably want to be in front of the guy I like in the most beautiful way possible." These words of the cunning Shen hit right on target. Luo Shi's gaze returned to the dresses that were hanging on the display case. Xia Xiaofei saw that her friend was hesitating. She called out to her. In the meantime, the guys had found some sort of internet club. The classmates decided to turn on their computers and play, to take their minds off the situation they were in. Peiji didn't sit down at the table with the others. He instead was about to leave the room. Wang Lan turned to the smart man. "Why don't you want to play? We're short a player." The bespectacled man looked around and with a smile replied, "I can't. Play by yourself." Fang Yan stood alone on the balcony and surveyed the city from the top of a tall building. Suddenly the hero heard a voice. "So naive, aren't they?" The young man looked around and saw Peiji with a glass in his hand. Smart offered a glass to Fan, but he declined, saying he didn't drink alcohol. Pei put his glass on the rail and said, "Yan, you understand everything deep down, don't you?" Most of them still don't understand what happened. They don't have enough knowledge about the possible risks in similar situations that we have experienced. But you can also see a hidden benefit here. "We're all left to live in an empty place. What does that mean?" Peiji asked. He answered his own question. "They don't understand, but I know you understand perfectly well." The smart guy was acting strange. It seems the power he had gotten made him crazy. The guy stretched his hand out over the city, grinning like a mad genius. The next moment he clenched his hand into a fist, as if demonstrating who was in control of this situation. Fang Yan noticed every look and gesture of his classmate. The bespectacled man shifted his gaze from the city to the hero. He waited for some sort of reaction from him. Suddenly, Yan replied, "I'm not interested in talking about it." The hero turned around and walked away, no longer paying attention to Peiji. Smarty Pants was left on the roof alone with his own thoughts. He didn't like that his classmate didn't keep the conversation going. Pei crushed the wine glass in his own hand in annoyance. The bespectacled man looked at his own hand in confusion. He was upset that Fen hadn't supported his idea. Night had fallen on the city, the lights on in the high-rise hotel building. The teens enjoyed relaxing on the soft bed. Shen Yue was soaking in a tub of bubble bath and red rose petals. Liang Da sank into the embrace of the bed, remembering his delicious dinner. Xia Xiaofei was alone in the room. Anxious thoughts kept her from resting. She was worried about her friend, who still wasn't in the room. While some were resting, some were hanging around the empty supermarket. Someone's hand reached for the flashlight. It was Fang Yan. The young man was not ready to go on vacation. He hoped to find answers to his questions. The hero pulled out his backpack. He was searching through it intently for something. Suddenly, the boy felt the presence of someone else. He saw a shadow out of the corner of his eye. Yan didn't immediately recognize who it was hiding in the shadows like a thief. But in the next moment, looking through the window of the store, he saw Luo Shi. The hero immediately recognized the girl. The young man was stunned by her appearance at this late hour. The beauty was not left thinking about her classmate's words. Like a thief, she snuck into a clothing store and froze beside a mannequin with a dress. The girl was still questioning whether to do it. Shen Yue's words resounded in my mind. If I were in your shoes, I would want to show the best version of myself in front of the guy I like. Belle still couldn't dare to touch the clothes she liked. Finally, the desire to please overcame Luo Shi's common sense. She reached out her hand, about to take the dress off the mannequin. Suddenly, the beauty was startled by a voice that called her by name. The girl was surprised to see Feng Yan here. The hero wanted to know what she forgot here in the middle of the night. Luo explained, I couldn't sleep, so I decided to take a walk. The beauty in turn asked what the young man was doing here, moreover with a backpack over his shoulders. Feng Yan replied, It's nothing special, I'm just gathering the essentials. It's still dangerous here, you shouldn't go alone. The girl said, You are always so calm and so reliable. Those are good traits for a man. You're the one who saved me. Are you going to protect me all the time? Luo Shi asked. The hero felt uncomfortable with the beauty being so close beside him. Belle noticed this and took a step back. She looked confused. Suddenly, the young man took a step forward and covered the girl's mouth with his palm. Fen asked the girl to be quiet and listened. He sensed danger. After a few seconds, he removed his hand from the beauty's face. Luo blushed. She whispered her question. Fang Yan, what's wrong? The hero whispered back, I think there's someone outside. Come to me. The teens took a few steps back and noticed someone in a dark cloak run past the store. The friends glanced around. What they had just seen was very strange. They realized that the man had come out of the supermarket. Feng Yan thought, How strange, it's not raining, but the man in the raincoat. A guy and a girl came out of a clothing store and walked to the door of the supermarket. The young man hesitated. He smelled a strange odor. Luo saw the worried look on his face and asked what was wrong. In the next moment, Feng realized that something wrong had happened. A second later, through the glass door of the store, the friends saw flames. The door swung open. Her classmate entered the store. The hero asked Luo Shi to bring someone to help as soon as possible. Feng Yan remembered that he had seen a fire extinguisher around here somewhere. The young man made his way to the place where they should be, but it was empty. How strange. Why isn't he here? I see him right here. The character was desperate. He believed his own memory, so it turns out someone did it intentionally. Fen quickly rushed to the door to find some sort of water source. Once in the back room, the young man saw a crane. There was a bucket standing beside him. Fen realized it was the only way to save the food. Meanwhile, Luo Qi managed to get to the hotel and woke up her classmates, telling them that the supermarket was on fire. Belle yelled that everyone was heading over there to help put out the flames. When the first classmates reached the supermarket, they were stunned by the size of the fire. One guy said to the others, Go and get some water, there's a communal restroom nearby. Everyone acted cohesively, trying to save the only source of food they have. The girls acted on par with the guys, actively bringing buckets of water. Feng Yan worked equally with the others. Suddenly he noticed that it wasn't working. When the water reached the flames, the latter only flared up more. The children didn't understand why this was happening and what they should do. Fen paused for a moment and thought about it. Kuma hero realized something was wrong. Suddenly one conjecture struck the young man. The hero thought, Why didn't the fire detector go off? Is it obsolete? Yan shouted to the others without further explanation. Close the door now! Some of the guys didn't understand why they had to close the door. Do you want all of us to inhale smoke and die? Peiji shouted at them. Everyone do as Feng Yan said! One of the girls ran up to the automatic doors and pressed a button to lock them. At the same minute, the supermarket premises filled with black smoke. All the children started coughing. They couldn't breathe. Someone asked the hero, Feng Yan, is everything going according to plan? The young man answered nothing, only clenched his fists, hoping his plan would work. Fen clamped his mouth with his palm and looked hopefully at the smoke detector that was located on the ceiling of the room. The next moment, the hero's hopes were still realized. Water poured directly from the ceiling onto the fire. The room was large enough, but there was plenty of water to tame the flames. Finally, the fire was put out, and the children were able to go outside for a breath of fresh air. Peiji felt that they needed to count their losses now. Many products were destroyed, mutilated by the flames. Feng Yan also went to see what provisions they had left. The young man looked at the charred racks of bottles and tried to figure out who was to blame. The hero looked around carefully, hoping to spot something unusual. While the other classmates breathed air, the boy continued his investigation. Fatty Liang Da was upset that a lot of food was destroyed. One of his classmates grabbed his head. What the hell happened here? Everything was fine during the day. How could there suddenly be such a fire? Feng Yan replied, What's there to be surprised about? Who purposely organized the fire? The hero paused, for he had not yet said everything. The next moment the young man said, addressing all present, The one who started this fire is one of us. Someone set the fire on purpose. I wonder what purpose he had in mind, Feng Yan said. For a moment, the classmates were confusedly silent, pondering such an accusation. One of them exclaimed, "How is this possible? Food belongs to all of us. Destroying supplies will do none of us any good. Who would do such foolishness?" The teens started looking at each other, trying to figure out who could have done such a thing. The next moment, Fan said that the culprit of the fire had left evidence. Cologne that doesn't belong in the food department showed up in bottles around the scene of the fire. I'm sure that's the cause of the fire, Hiro added. The culprit set the cologne on fire near the grocery shelves to start the fire. Having done so, he fled back to the hotel, hoping thus to avoid suspicion. He managed to blend in with the crowd of teenagers who came running to put out the fire, Fen finished. The hero looked like a man confident in his words. One of the boys exclaimed, "From your musings, it appears that the one who smells strongly of cologne is to blame?" Jan didn't answer anything. He took a seat near one of the bottles. The young man picked up the tin and sniffed it carefully. Cologne evaporates easily at high temperatures. The thick smoke from the fire must have made its odor disappear, said the hero. Suddenly the fat man exclaimed that he remembered something. The boy looked at one of his classmates. He repeated, "Now I remember everything." Liang Da pointed his finger at one of his classmates who had insulted him today. The young man was sure he smelled the strong odor of cologne from him as soon as the guy came running in here. A classmate shouted, "Don't take it out on me, you nasty fatty. You're saying that on purpose because of the situation that happened this afternoon." But suddenly a hand was laid on the boy's shoulder and someone said, "I think you need to be taught a lesson." It was Pei Ji, he added. "Unfortunately, I also smelled that odor." The enraged guy looked around. He couldn't believe his own ears that he had just been accused of arson. He furtively glanced at the door, trying to think of a way to escape reprisal. The next moment, the young man was out of his seat and headed swiftly for the door. The boy tried to run away, but the brigand Wang Lan rushed to catch up with him. He was fast. A few more steps and Lan would catch up with his classmate. Van reached out and grabbed the guy by the collar of his t-shirt. With a violent jerk, he knocked the young man to the ground. The other classmates ran outside. They were happy that the culprit had been caught. The kids didn't understand if this guy was really at fault and why he had to do it. Feng Yan said, "Perhaps he felt embarrassed and then angry after what happened this afternoon." Pei Ji said that it was all very disgusting. The enraged young man shouted, "Damn it! Why are all of you against me? Feng Yan definitely doesn't have good intentions. Do you really think I don't know anything about your secret plans?" A classmate asked angrily, looking at the hero. He added, "It seems that Fang Yan and Luo Shi were the first to see the fire. Why were they at the scene of the fire together at such a late hour?" The other kids agreed that it was really quite strange. The guy claimed that when he approached, he saw Fang Yan's backpack on the counter. He was sure that the hero wanted to steal something valuable from the supermarket. The purple-haired classmate looked at Feng Yan with a sneaky glance. Then he turned around and walked to the supermarket, tossing over his shoulder, "I'll get my backpack." Upon reaching his destination, the boy looked into his classmate's bag. In his backpack, he found food, a powerful flashlight, and some kind of box. The other children stood nearby, their eyes rounded in surprise. Even Luo Shi, who was in love with the hero, stood with a surprised expression on her face. The classmates peppered Feng Yan with questions. "Why are you doing all this? What are you going to do?" Belle shifted her gaze to the hero. She wanted an answer. These teenagers kept their gazes on Feng Yan, wanting an explanation of the contents of his backpack. Suddenly everyone shuddered with loud laughter. The guy who was accused of arson exclaimed, "I told you so. That bastard's up to something bad." Wang Lan put his hand on his shoulder and asked him to calm down. Pei Ji corrected his glasses. He was about to speak. Smarty Pants wanted to hear Feng Yan explain the contents of his backpack. All eyes settled on the hero, but he remained silent. Even the guy's girlfriend, Xia Xiaofei, was astonished by his action. The hero continued to remain silent. He closed his eyes, trying to gather his thoughts. Taking a deep exhale, he finally said, "I'm out of here. That's it." Xia Xiao was stunned by this decision of her friend. She couldn't believe her own ears. The bespectacled man was silent for a while, thinking of what to answer. Finally, he said, "Feng Yan, I know you're worried. But who doesn't want to get out of here as soon as possible? If there are any problems, we can solve them together." The hero replied to the smartass, "That's not necessary at all." The young man picked up his backpack and added, "I'll figure it out on my own." But suddenly someone blocked the guy's exit from the supermarket. It was the blonde girl, Shen Yue. The girl angrily said, "You think you can leave whenever you want?" The girl pointed her finger at the leftover food. "We just lost so much food, and you're taking away some of what's left. You're the one adding fuel to the fire." Yan wasn't going to explain anything to her. But this turn of events did not suit the angry Shen Yue at all. She shouted back at the hero, "To be honest, I thought you were suspicious from the beginning. When something like this happens, you remain calm every time, as if it had nothing to do with you." The girl continued her accusations. Shen thought that such behavior could only mean one thing. Yan knew everything in advance. The guy with strands of purple hair looked stunned after these words of the girl. Now the classmates were hostile against the hero. Xia Xiao decided to intervene. Shen Yue, don't you understand anything about this life? If it wasn't for Fang Yan, we would still be stuck in that thick fog with no food. Fatty Liang Da also decided to support the hero. That's right. And if Brother Yan hadn't found the proof, this guy would have gotten away with it. Shen Yue replied, who knows why he did all this? But you dear friends have been licking Fang Yan's shoes from the beginning. Picking sides in a group is not good in my opinion, the blonde added. Pei Ji now intervened in the conversation. He ordered the girl to stop. She looked back and glared angrily at the bespectacled man, but he looked determined. His gaze through his glasses was as sharp as a razor blade. The smartass silenced Shen Yue, although she didn't like it. Pei looked at Feng once more and said, You seem to have made an unshakable decision? The hero replied, I had no other plan from the beginning. The bespectacled man pretended to agree with his classmate's decision. I realize that many of you have your own ideas. In fact, I've already discussed this problem with Fang Yan, Pei Ji said. The hero looked at the bespectacled man and managed to see his barely perceptible smile. While we're safe for now, though, someone else needs to investigate the surroundings, Pei added. So I'll respect your choice whether you want to stay or not, summed up the smart guy. But if someone tries to undermine the collective interest, as he did, I won't tolerate it, Pei Ji said in a scary voice. For a while, everyone present was silent, each deciding for himself how to go on living. Suddenly, someone called back, I'll go with Fang Yan, too. It was Xia Xiaofei. The girl looked determined. The other classmates were amazed by the beauty's decisive act. The girl added, Fang Yan, it's too dangerous for you to go on such a journey alone. We can take care of each other if I go together with you, Xia Xiao said. Luo Shi was stunned by his friend's decision. The girl looked scared. She was too weak to stay with her classmates without her friends. But she was also very scared to decide to go along with them. Belle hesitated. Trying to make a decision, she tugged the bow on her dress. Finally, Luo Shi exclaimed that she would also go with them. Fang Yan said, I don't know what exactly awaits us outside, and I can't guarantee your safety. The young man thought it was better for the girls to stay with others. Luo Shi wanted to object to something, but she couldn't. Shen Yue smiled and called the beauty a coward. Xia Xiao took a deep exhale and said, All right, but don't try to change my mind. She added that there was no way she would change her mind. At this moment, the frightened Liang Da was trying to make a fateful decision. The young man thought, Yan is the only one who can protect me. If I stay, I will definitely be oppressed by others. But the cowardly young man was not used to risking his life either, so he hesitated. Finally, fear of being bullied overcame fear for his own life, and the fat man raised his hand. He said that he also wanted to leave with Feng Yan. The classmates immediately started laughing. There he is, the third asshole. It's actually a good thing he decided to leave because he won't be eating our food anymore. Liang Da took a few steps towards those who weren't mocking him. Pei Ji did not comment on his classmates' actions in any way, only silently observing the situation. He then looked around at the other classmates and asked if there were any others who wanted to join. Some of the guys still decided to go exploring with a small group. But he said he had one condition. Anyone who decides to go can bring water and food, enough for at least 2 days. The other classmates did not want to agree to this condition. But the young man with glasses knew what to offer others. He promised the following. If we find more resources, we'll be back to let you know. Pei Ji smiled and agreed to this condition, saying that in that case, they had a deal. Suddenly, Teacher Zhang appeared outside the supermarket. She asked, Is everything all right? How did the supermarket catch fire late at night? She approached each of the children and asked if anyone was hurt. Pei Ji said, It's all right now. Miss Zhang, I'll bring you up to speed. The students started whispering, What happened to miss our teacher? It was very noisy in the hotel, but she didn't hear anything. So unreliable. Hearing that a few disciples wanted to go on a reconnaissance mission, Miss Zhang asked if Fang Yan was sure of his decision. The woman didn't understand how one should act in such a situation, even though she was the only adult among the students. She looked confused and frustrated at the same time. Feng Yan replied, In such special circumstances, it is better to have a leader than to get lost and disappear like sand scattered by the wind. The teacher replied that she would be worried. We just got settled in and you're already going somewhere else. In the next moment, Zhang exclaimed, Perhaps I'd better come with you too. But the hero objected. There are students here who are staying. Compared to us, they need more of your attention. The woman closed her eyes. She knew Fen was saying the right things. The hero added, already addressing the other classmates. We'll go back to the hotel, pack up tonight and leave in the morning. The next morning everyone met again to say goodbye. Pei Ji wished Feng and his friends good luck in their investigation. The hero looked around and replied, Then we're leaving. The boys' team set off on their adventure. while the remaining classmates stared silently in their wake. Shen Yue quietly asked Page A, "Are you sure this will work?" Smarty Pants didn't have time to answer before he was called out by Wang Lan, who was standing behind him. He wanted to know from his leader what to do about the one who burned down the supermarket. Page E was silent. He seemed to be thinking up a punishment for the culprit. The bound fellow trembled with terror, awaiting his punishment. The bespectacled man decided to torture him, so he took his time answering. At last he said, "Give him some fire if he loves it so much." Meanwhile, the research team wandered through the streets of the city in the fog. One of the boys started to whimper. "We've been walking for hours. Where are we going, Fang Yan?" The hero replied without looking back, "We're heading east of the city." The girls who also participated in this expedition looked scared and tired. Xia Xiao said to her friend, "We've been walking for so long. Let's take a break, okay?" Feng glanced at the smartphone display. He couldn't believe that they had been walking for 3 hours. The young man looked around and noticed a sidewalk cafe. He suggested that his classmates sit there for a while. Xiao Fei looked into her backpack and asked her friend, "Luo Shi, are you hungry?" "Let's eat now, for we don't know what will happen next," the girl added. Another classmate, who also went on the expedition with them, asked if she could sit next to them. Xia Xiao called her captain and hurriedly allowed her to sit at her table. The blonde replied that they weren't in training right now and asked her to call her Qin Yu. Xia Xiao asked her girlfriend, "Luo Shi, remember when you were afraid to talk to the captain? Why not try it now?" The beauty blushed at such a suggestion. While the girls were talking, some of the guys were watching them closely. The young man was in awe of Xiao Fei's short hair, Luo Shi's delicate face, and Qin Yu's perfect figure. One of the classmates hid their faces behind the camera lens. The young man blushed, looking at the beauties. He decided that he had not gone on this expedition in vain. Liang Da walked up to the photographer and asked, "Li Jiamu, are you still taking pictures, even in this situation?" The young man replied, "What do you realize? It's under these conditions that you can take the most impressive portraits. I'll post them on my personal blog when we get home." The guy was already imagining comments from his fans and dreaming of how famous he would become. Fatty thought it was disgusting, right down to the goosebumps. Wang Liang called Li Jiamu a pervert, but the latter took it as a compliment. Meanwhile, the other members of the expedition also decided to have a refreshment. Feng Yan looked anxious. He felt responsible for all the classmates who decided to leave with him. The young man was so immersed in his own thoughts that he was even startled when he heard his name and the question of what he was doing. A classmate with glasses suggested, "I think you're watching the food being laid out." The hero looked back and replied, "Chen Zhou, what are your thoughts on this matter?" The young man replied, "After seeing what happened to our teacher, I secretly conducted similar experiments. Unfortunately, we can't limit changes when the time itself is not the standard. Because of this, we won't be able to get a reliable result." Feng Yan slouched his eyes but did not comment on Chen Zhou's words in any way. But the man wasn't done. "I found something in the fog. Here it is." The guy put some square object on the table with notes on it. The hero asked, "Is this really a portable air detector?" Chen smiled and replied, "Oh, you're really smart, Feng Yan." He explained, "Generally, smog is a general term to define various particulate matter exceeding permissible limits in the atmosphere. Among them, sulfur dioxide, index 2.5, is the best known. But strangely, the fog here seems to have a different cause from the common causes." The hero agreed. Indeed, the sulfur dioxide reading is normal all the time. Feng waited for Chen Zhou to voice his conclusions. The boy took his find and looked at it closely. Then he put it back in his backpack and said, "If we were at my uncle's institute right now, with all these professional instruments, I'm sure I could analyze the components of the fog." The hero inquired, "Is that why you came with us?" Chen answered in the affirmative, and asked why Yan wanted to go to the east of the city. The guy didn't find something to answer right away, or he just didn't want to share his own thoughts yet. Yan said he had something he needed to check. Meanwhile, in the office of the Special Investigations Division, Wang Liang sat at the table with his feet on it and pondered. A man was reading the news. The first news item said, "The supermarket's starry sky caught fire late at night. No one was injured." The second one said, "A lot of goods suddenly disappeared in the Star Sky supermarket of the Krasnaya Zvezda shopping center." Wang heard his assistant Mitao walk up. The chief asked the girl how things were now regarding their investigation. Mitao replied that so far there is nothing new, no progress at all. Wang Liang smilingly advised the assistant not to worry, assuring her that they had plenty of time. The girl said, "But without the door, we have no other way of knowing what's going on in there." Typically, when the initial fear of an unfamiliar environment passes, some of our experimental subjects who have ideas and motivation to act should start doing something, explained the chief. "From the tracks these kids leave, it's not hard to guess what they're doing," the man added. Mitao asked, Aren't you afraid they will move faster than we expected? Wang Liang advised the beauty not to worry. When time loses its standard, the concepts of fast and slow have no meaning at all. Suddenly, something on the monitor caught the attention of the Special Investigations representative. The next moment, he heard the phone ringing in his pocket. Picking up the phone, the man inquired what had happened. When he pressed stand down, Mitao asked, "Is it from our organization? What happened?" Wang Liang snapped out of his chair without answering anything to the assistant. Bell tried to stop him to question him, but it was all in vain. Already reaching the door, the young gentleman answered the assistant. "A new body has been found," Wang Liang said with a strange smile. Meanwhile, the journey of the research team continued. They reached the poor and shabby areas of the city. Fatty Liang Da was dissatisfied with the ferocious wind. He felt uncomfortable. Feng Yan took out a map and told his friends that the road in front of them would be short. According to their tentative plan, they may pass by a supermarket or mini-market from time to time. The hero explained that food wouldn't be a problem in that case, but there was a moment he dreaded. Their team continued on their way, Fen walking ahead, at the head of the group. Photographer Li Jiam never let go of his camera and clicked it at every turn. He dreamed that as soon as he got out of here, he would become incredibly popular. Suddenly, the young man heard some sound that startled him greatly. Fen shouted somewhere ahead where the fog was piling up, "Who's there?" The guys behind didn't understand what was wrong. Li Jiam said that he had just seen a figure walking by. The children didn't understand how this was possible, since most of them didn't see anyone but their classmates. Someone suggested that the photographer took so many pictures that he caught hallucinations. But Li Jiamu was willing to swear that he had indeed seen a dark figure. He told the others that he wanted to check it out. "You go ahead and I'll catch up with you later." The friends decided to leave this paranoid guy alone and went ahead. Meanwhile, the photographer started looking around through the lens of his camera. The young man was scared, for everything around him looked abandoned. Suddenly, Li Jiam realized that the fog around him was getting thicker and thicker. The boy swallowed his saliva. He wanted to catch up with the others as soon as possible. He remembered the teacher telling them about the fog before his death. Namely, that these seemingly natural phenomena can be really dangerous. Touching the mist with his finger, the young man looked at his own hand. Perhaps he had just made it up. But suddenly the photographer smelled a strange odor. It scared him even more. Taking another step forward, he saw through the fog a large red stain on the ground and wall of the house. Only now did Li Chie realize that he had smelled blood a few seconds ago. The young man came closer, going to take a picture of these spots, because then his classmates would not believe him. The photographer thought, "How? After all, there shouldn't be anyone here but us." The boy couldn't take his startled gaze away from those spots. They looked really awful, and there was also a nasty Swedish odor. The next moment, Li Jiam's attention was caught by a camera that was lying on the ground just a little further away. The young man froze in place, for this camera looked just like his own. The young man bent down to get a good look at the technique. He saw bloody stains on the camera. He was about to bend down to pick up the camera. Suddenly, the hero heard some sounds that scared him even more than the bloodstains. Is there really someone else here? A killer lurking in the fog? Li Jiam thought, "This place is very strange. We need to find somewhere to hide." The frightened young man pressed himself against the wall, trying to stand as quiet as a mouse. The boy heard some shouting from the fog but couldn't make out anything. The photographer began to shake like an aspen leaf. Suddenly, the young man heard footsteps that were rapidly approaching. He thought fearfully, "They're coming this way." The footsteps switched to a run. A few more seconds and the strangers would be at his side. The photographer sat down on the ground and tried not to breathe so that he wouldn't be overheard. Li Jiam gritted his teeth and tried to blend in with the wall. From the sounds of it, people came by, but they didn't notice the guy. The photographer couldn't believe his own luck. Had they really gone? Sweat was pouring down the guy's face, his hair covering his face. He picked up the camera and realized he had accidentally pressed the button. The young man realized he may have taken a picture of the people who had just run past. Li Jiam pressed a button and saw his classmates on the camera display. The photographer couldn't believe his own eyes, how this was even possible. Suddenly he remembered the camera he had recently seen on the floor. After standing for a while longer, the young man finally decided to come out of his hiding place. Taking a few steps forward, Li leaned over, reaching out for the camera. Picking up the camera, the guy wanted to see the last shots. His hands were shaking. The photographer's eyes went to his forehead when he saw the very shot he had taken a moment ago on his camera. Meanwhile, the rest of their troop continued their journey. They were glad that there should be a store ahead. One of the classmates said, "We are finally here. That hypocrite Peiji stayed at the supermarket with his delicious food and only gave us this crap." Xia Xiaofei asked Fulun where Li Jiao was, for he was following them. The young man replied. Li heard something on the way and said he wanted to check it out. That's why he fell behind. He's a photographer, so apparently he's even happy about the situation. Feng Yan said to the others, "It's dangerous in the fog. How could you let him go alone?" Fulun exclaimed in his defense. "What could we do? He wanted to go there himself. Another young man said, "Come on, it's okay, really should have stopped him. Wait for us at the store. We'll find him and come back here. Also, I need to go to the bathroom. I've been patient for a long time." He pulled his classmate behind him in the direction the photographer had gone. Luoshi asked Fang Yan if the guys would be okay. The hero replied that he still didn't quite understand how the fog worked. He had no sooner finished than everyone present heard horrible screams. The next moment, the classmates heard the stomping of feet and saw the boys rapidly approaching. They only stopped when they saw their own, those expecting some sort of explanation. Liang Da fearfully said, "Weren't you just following us?" The guys looked scared. One had a bloodstain visible on his jacket. There was no hiding this fact from Feng Yan's attentive gaze. The young men could not catch their breath. They looked very frightened. Suddenly, Xia Xiao shouted, "They want to escape!" One of the boys was grabbed by one of his classmates by his shirt. It was Captain Qin Yu. She exclaimed, "Quickly tell me what happened. Have you seen Jiawu? Why is there blood on you?" Fu Lun was trembling all over, his teeth clenched. He couldn't utter a single word. Another young man sat down and put his hands around his head. He kept repeating, "We didn't mean to. We didn't mean to." Chen Zhou glanced at Feng Yan, waiting for his reaction, but the young man remained silent. Finally, he said for everyone to stop panicking. "We need to sort things out calmly." The hero asked the frightened young man to tell what happened in the fog. Fu Lun was so scared that he only repeated the question, "Tell me what happened." The captain was losing patience. She kept holding the guy by the bars. The frightened boy could not quiet his feelings. He refused to tell what they had seen. Qin Yu wanted to know where the blood on the young man's jacket came from. The beautiful girl was behaving aggressively. Chen Zhou put his hand on the girl's shoulder and asked her to calm down. Those words from her classmate really took effect. The captain realized she had overreacted. She finally let go of the already scared guy. Meanwhile, Fu Lun fell to his knees, a frantic smile wandering on his face. The young man repeated that he didn't want to do this. Finally, he pulled himself together and began his story. When the boys separated from the group, they walked in the direction the photographer had gone. Lun pointed in the direction their friend Li had gone. The boys were walking down a shabby street, trying to see something through the fog. One of them told the other that the fog seemed thicker from afar. Suddenly, one of them smelled blood. Fu Lun said to a comrade, "It's so terrible here. Why do we have to do this?" The next moment, something really startled the boys, and he screamed loudly. It turned out that the young boys were scared by their own classmate. Li Jiam completely unexpectedly came out of the fog right in front of them. The boys asked why he hadn't caught up with them yet, but was wandering around here alone. The photographer's eyes were hidden behind his hair. He repeated only a few words. "You. It was you." Fu Lun asked his comrade, "Why do I get the feeling that he's out of it?" A friend replied, "I'm afraid he just lost his common sense because he inhaled too much fog." The young man reached out to his comrade, going to bring him to his senses. But it was at that very moment that the photographer pounced on a classmate, his eyes glinting with red light. The startled boy exclaimed, "Hey, what are you doing?" Li Jiam held a knife in his hand and waved it in front of his classmate's face. He shouted that he wanted to kill him. The photographer was really not full of intelligence. He behaved completely inadequately. The guys found themselves in a strange situation in which they needed to calm down a crazy comrade. Fu Lun shouted, "These ones are really out of their minds. We better run away from here." The photographer swung his knife. He clearly wasn't going to stop. One of the boys intercepted his hand, in which the young man held a knife. The madman's strength seemed to have increased. The classmate was having a hard time restraining him. The camera that was hanging around Li Jian's neck came off his belt. The photographer didn't notice his camera was on the ground. The crazed expression did not leave Li Jian's face. The young man who was holding the photographer's hand with the knife twisted it so that he stabbed himself. The blood from Li's wound splattered in different directions. Thus it appeared on the jacket of his killer, who didn't really mean to do it. Fu Lun began to shake. That was how the murder he saw affected him. The injured Li Jian was still on his feet. He was trying to say something. He pointed his finger at a classmate. "That's you." The frightened boy mumbled to himself that he didn't mean it. This was the last straw. The young man broke from his seat and ran in the direction of his friends with wild screams. Meanwhile, in the parallel world, Mitao found herself at the place where the corpse was found. The girl covered her mouth with her palm. Her eyes widened in horror. "And this is what you call a body?" The sight was truly horrific. The photographer's body had many eyes and hands. Mitao took her gaze away from the horrible body. She tried to hold back the nausea. Wang Liang said to the assistant with a smile, "There's a trash can over there. Don't ruin the work of art." The woman did feel sick, though she had seen many unusual things in her life. Meanwhile, the man crouched next to the body, trying to see every detail. He had no aversion. Even his appetite hadn't gone anywhere. Wang bit off a piece of melon and looked at the unfortunate man again. He was told that the identity of the body had already been confirmed. The man handed Wang Liang the corpse's personnel file. The representative of the Special Investigation Department read, Li Jiawu. Age, 16 years old. Male gender, height 167 centimeters, weight 65 kilograms. Date of birth, the 28th of October, 2002. Wang said, turning to the assistant. Some of them keep moving. This fearless exploratory spirit is truly admirable. The man looked skyward and added, but he's hit the paradox zone. Meanwhile, in the ghostly world, the captain did not hold back her emotions. She fell the young man to the ground and exclaimed, "Why did you kill him?" Tears came to the blonde Qinyu's eyes. She wanted answers to her questions. Xiaoxiao tried to calm down the captain, but it was all to no avail. The girl was shuddering with sobs. Chen Zhou looked at the beauty. He seemed to like her. At last, he ventured to touch the girl and offered her his help. But Qinyu exclaimed, "Let me go! They killed him!" Belle repeated over and over, "We had an agreement." She fell to her knees beside Chen Zhou. "We agreed that the three of us would go home. How could this have happened?" Chen also looked upset. He gritted his teeth to keep from crying. Suddenly, everyone present heard screams and realized that there was someone else in the fog. Sweat appeared on Feng Yan's face. The hero exclaimed, "Who is it?" The young men who had just returned from the fog looked at each other puzzled. Through the fog, two silhouettes approached that were still hard to recognize. Chen Zhou said. The voice seemed familiar to him. Feng Yan could no longer stand still. He rushed forward, straight into the fog. But suddenly the hero stopped right at the edge of the white wall. He could no longer take a single step forward. Suddenly the young man realized that the fog was preventing him from going inside. The hero saw, as if through a white sheet, a dark shadow rapidly approaching. Suddenly a hand appeared out of the mist and a cry for help was heard. It was another Fu Long, alive and unharmed. He was begging Feng Yan for help. The hero's eyes widened in surprise. He hadn't expected such a turn of events. The young man pushed aside his doubts and held out his hand, their fingers about to meet. The boy lay on the ground and continued to stretch his arms forward, and hoping to escape the treacherous fog. Meanwhile, Fen couldn't take a single step forward. A drop of sweat appeared on the hero's face. What the hell? He thought. The guy looked at the fog and didn't understand what was going on here. The hero tried to urgently think of something to help his classmate. The next moment he was off his seat and rushing in the other direction, which further surprised everyone present. The young man ordered the schoolboys to run forward, and as fast as they could. Once upon a time there was a fisherman named Kotaro Fukushima. One day he accidentally saved a huge turtle on the seashore. He was invited to the Dragon King's underwater castle as a guest. Before returning to land, the Dragon King's daughter gave Kotaro a jade box. The girl asked the hero to never open her gift. When Fukushima returned to the fishing village, he was surprised to see that all the people he knew had disappeared somewhere, and everyone else who lived here didn't recognize him at all. Stunned by what was happening, the young man forgot about the Dragon King's daughter's order and opened the jade box. This was the legend Wang Liang told his assistant. It's called A Day in the Sky, A Year on Earth. For Fukushima, it was just a sleepy night, but in the mortal world, it's been decades. Mitao could understand that, but she still had certain questions. Belle wanted to know a mystery that was incomprehensible to her. In this lab, covered by a sheet, Li Jiam's body was lying there. The girl wondered what had happened to him. The Special Investigations representative only smiled, marveling at his assistant's sensitivity. He planted an apple in his hand and said that was a different story. Sisyphus, the founder and king of Corinth, was the most resourceful man on earth. One day he managed to unlock the secrets of the gods. This knowledge was so useful that it even helped Sisyphus avoid death. But in the end, he was only a man who could not escape the punishment of the gods. The gods banished the human king to the borders of hell. They had a man push a big rock up the slope to the top of the mountain. The boulder was so big and heavy that each time it fell again and again without ever reaching the top. This senseless labor Sisyphus will repeat forever and ever. The gods believed that there was no severe punishment other than to make man perform useless and hopeless labor over and over again. At the end of the story, Lan Wang explained, "I don't know what this poor man encountered out there, but I'm sure that from his first entry into the zone of paradox, the young man was in a cycle of helpless despair. He was caught in an endless cycle of death, which he experienced over and over again. It's really scary to get into a place like this. Seeing and realizing your true doom is something not everyone can experience." You added, "What we end up seeing now is the result of the infinite loop being forcibly compressed to a single point. It's a work of art created by a great deal of time and space," was the opinion of a Special Investigations representative. Mitao wished to understand why the so-called paradox occurs. The guy was amused that the assistant still didn't get the point. The important thing in this story is not the punishment the gods inflicted on Sisyphus. What matters is the existence of gods and their desire to punish mankind for sins. Meanwhile, in the parallel world of ghostly fog, Feng Yan ran forward. The kids were confused. They didn't understand what was going on here, and Fen couldn't explain anything right now. The hero had time to notice that the fog was chasing them. Luo ran ahead of Feng. The young man was afraid of leaving her behind, so he didn't overtake her. Suddenly a rock appeared in the fragile girl's path, which she didn't notice and tripped over. Luo Si fell to the ground. The beauty screamed because she was in a lot of pain. Xia Xiao, who was running ahead, noticed her friend's fall. She saw Feng Yan's figure stop behind the beauty. The hero helped Luo Si stand up, supporting her under his elbow. The girl was in pain from leaning on her leg. The young man looked back and realized that the fog had caught up with them. Captain Qin Yu was running ahead. When the girl stopped hearing the stomping feet of her friends behind, she stopped and called out to them. Feng shouted to the girls to run faster. The young man didn't leave Luo Shi and ran along with her. Suddenly, Chen Zhou shouted, "Feng Yan, get down!" The bespectacled man threw something in the direction of his classmates. The hero made Luo duck his head, for they were in danger. The friends fell to the ground, a column of flame rising behind them. Liang Da asked the smart guy what it was that he threw. Chen Zhou replied, "It was a Molotov cocktail made from food I found at the supermarket." Fatty put a finger up, thinking that was really cool. Xia Xiaofei asked the guys what they should do now, since the fire had stopped the fog for a short while. Feng Yan wondered what to reply to the others. Finally, the hero pointed his finger somewhere ahead and beckoned his classmates to follow him. The friends saw a staircase and an entrance ahead and rushed in. Fan urged his classmates to run straight to the second floor. A black-gloved hand rested on a stick. A dark figure in a black cloak watched the children from the roof of the building. Meanwhile, the last of the research team ran into the room. Feng Yan immediately rushed to close the doors and asked the others to close all the windows. Fu Lun shouted at their leader, "Are you crazy? Hiding here will just wait for our doom." Feng replied, "Compared to being chased all the time, here at least we'll have a better chance of surviving." The character has some assumptions that he was going to share with others. For the other classmates, this explanation was enough, but not for Fu Lun. Meanwhile, everyone else rushed to fulfill the leader's request and close all the windows. Chen Zhou rushed to the second floor to the window. Xia Xiao kept up with her classmates and also closed all the windows that came her way. This room that the research team ran into turned out to be a hospital. The tired and frightened children scattered to their wards, about to get a good night's rest. Luo Shi's battered knee needed help. The treatment center had everything he needed. Belle cried, for the treatment of battered knees was not a pleasant procedure. The guys reported that it was too early for them to rest. They needed to check that they were really safe here. Chen reported to the others to check all the doors and windows, all well closed. There shouldn't be any problems. Liang Da heaved a sigh of relief. They would finally be able to rest. After all, he really wanted to sleep. Feng Yan looked somehow tense. His emotions were transmitted to Zhou as well. He asked the leader what was wrong and listened to the sounds in the hospital corridors. The hero explained that he was concerned about the two classmates who had returned from the fog. Chen remembered that something like this had happened to them before. Feng Yan kept his gaze on the young men sitting in a separate chamber. He closed the door and said to his comrades, "Tonight the three of us will be on duty." The young men did not argue, but immediately agreed to this forced step. Xia Xiaofei and Luo Shi were already sleeping sweetly. The girls were very tired during this day and had experienced emotional exhaustion. Qin Yu, on the other hand, couldn't sleep. She thought of Li Jian. Chen Zhou also remembered his friend whom he had lost today. The next morning, an unpleasant surprise awaited the explorers. The two youths who returned from the mist stated, "With the restriction and amount of food, staying here is like just waiting to die. It's better to rush in there and fight the invisible enemy face to face." Fen tried to calm the boys down. He asked that they think hard about their decision. Yan said, "We don't even know what it is. It's very aggressive, so I don't think there's anything you two can do. Besides, we still don't know about the danger of the fog. What's the difference between you two running outside and a butterfly throwing itself into the fire?" Fu Lun replied, "Stop talking nonsense. You just don't consider us as members of your team." Zhou glanced at the girls. All of them were silent and did not interfere in this conversation. Two classmates called the others a bunch of cowards and walked toward the hospital exit, armed with a scalpel and chainsaw. Feng Yan silently looked after them. He understood that these two had returned from the fog damaged. The hero said to those classmates who stayed behind, "Quickly pack your things. We have to go now." Luo asked confusedly, "You said we wouldn't leave with them." The young man explained that they would have a better chance of escaping, while those two attracted the attention of the danger from the fog. The opportunity should not be neglected. Suddenly, Xia Xiao asked the others to wait. The girl felt that this using her own classmates as bait was unfair. Perhaps in a different situation Fen would have gone along without her, but right now the lives of his other classmates were on the line, and he felt responsible for them. Chen supported Feng. Yan just tried to persuade them, but in this state, they don't listen to anyone at all. Under our circumstances, there's no time to worry about other people who have made their own choices. Fatty and the girls looked shocked. They were not strong enough for such decisions. This is the kind of situation where the collective needs a leader. They all went to the hospital warehouse to replenish their own supplies. The girls silently put the necessary things into their backpacks. There was no mood to talk. Suddenly, everyone on the second floor heard a heartbreaking scream. Feng Yan was the first to rush towards the sound, followed by Chen Zhou, who appeared from the room. The young men ran out onto the roof of the building and marveled down. It was hard to see everything through the fog. When the fog cleared a bit, Fen saw something horrible. This sight threw him off balance. In front of the boys' eyes lay the mangled body of their classmate in a red puddle. A figure in a dark cloak and a mask with a bird's beak stood beside the remains of the unfortunate man. Blood dripped from the murderer's knife.